The Noble Queen, a Shadow Slave Fanfic. Author NobleQueenBee. Chapter 426 to 450. The message that Noble had sent to Fort had included half of the memory used for communication. She had done that for two reasons. The first was to let her husband know that she was still alive and well. The other's voice was how Fort had known she was not dead when she fell into the nightmare seed, and so she hoped it would set his mind at ease now as well. The second reason was so that they could get the most important part of their conversation out of the way before she reached the kids and her attention was diverted. The first message Noble sent had no response, and she pursed her lips. "Did I misjudge the distance? Noble, is that you?" A second voice entered the professor's mind. Apparently, she had either been off on her guess of distance or Fort hadn't been listening until now. Depending on how often they chatted on her walks home in the future, she would discover which it was. "I am heading back to the house now. I'll be there shortly." The urge to lift over the houses and fly home was strong, but her resolve not to let her nosy children overhear the serious conversation was stronger. And Noble wasn't sure she could wait until bed to give her husband the most important information she had gathered that day. "How did everything go?" Rennell came by but Yosh. Noble cut off her husband's line of questions. "Master Yosh. What about him? He isn't here, is he?" Fort rushed Noble's mind with questions. "He is a monster," the professor explained quickly. "You've said that before." Fort seemed genuinely confused. "I have proof now. I ran into it again today." "Not Yosh," Noble quickly corrected herself, "but another body the Skinwalker had stolen." "Skinwalker? What do you mean by stolen?" The ambassador tried to wrap his head around his wife's words. "From what I witnessed, it kills a person and takes over their body, wearing it and talking like nothing has changed." Noble continued to feel for the malevolent presence even as she turned down her street. So far everything was clear. "What exactly did you witness?" The strain in Fort's question pricked Noble's heart. Once again she had experienced something incomprehensible without her husband. "When we were heading to the palace, a vessel of the Skinwalker approached me and tried to latch on. When that didn't work, it killed and took over Ginner's body before eventually being destroyed by Lady Cetian and some of her sisters and allies." Noble felt a little weird lumping Mordred in with the pilgrims, but she didn't want to get bogged down in that particular detail. "I went to the waking world and spoke to Saint Kor. He will track down Master Yosh and any other vessels of the Skinwalker that he can find. That was why I'm late for dinner." "I'm sorry." Fort didn't respond right away. It was a lot to take in. "Ginner is dead." Noble bit her lip. "I should have found a better way to tell you." "How well did you know him?" The professor had been so caught up in her own experience that she hadn't really thought about how the news of a colleague's death might hurt her husband. "I didn't know him well," Fort answered after a pause. "But still, he is gone just like that. We spoke this afternoon before you left. It's all so sudden." "It is. I'm sorry." Noble wished she could hug her husband. How could she have been so thoughtless? After a long silence, Fort entered her head once more. Be honest with me." The professor frowned. "What do you want to know?" "You said that the Skinwalker is killing and taking over people. Is there a limit to how many it can possess?" "I'm not sure," Noble answered. Lindy had been killed when Ginner was taken over, but Noble suspected that was a kill of convenience. "Then, if I had listened to you and followed up on Yosh more thoroughly, it's possible that Ginner would be alive right now, correct?" Stopping in the street, Noble felt the weight of her husband's question. "You can't think like that. Even if you confronted Yosh, the most likely end would have been him trying to kill you. The Skinwalker attacked multiple saints today without a second thought. You wouldn't have been able to change anything. It would have continued to spread even with your interference. It was only the information from Cetian and Mordred that had helped Noble understand the insidious nature of the nightmare creature. Before that, what would Fort have been able to say when if he confronted Yosh? My wife has a bad feeling about you. That would not have gone over well. So while she understood Fort's self-doubt, she couldn't support it. If Noble did, she would also have to blame herself for not being more insistent. The blame game would not get them anywhere. Fort did not seem in the mood to argue with her assessment. I suppose you are right. I love you and am glad you are safe. Are you almost home? Noble grimaced. I think so. Between talking to you and looking out for more skinwalkers, I haven't been paying full attention to where I am going. B, are you lost again? Noble's grimace turned to a wince. I'll be home in a minute. You'll see. Abandoning her conscious sweep for the crazed monster, Noble focused on finding her husband among all the homes. He was easy to find and not far off. You may want to summon your breadcrumbs in case I'm not home next time. Fort advised with a bit of amusement. Noble's eyes opened wide. How could he possibly have known her tactic? Don't be too impressed, Fort answered her unasked question. You've never been good with directions. You are both smart and insulting. I don't know whether to be offended or impressed. Noble stuck out her tongue at her absent husband. Silently she summoned the breadcrumbs and allowed the glowing trail to form behind her. Next time she would be able to hover over the settlement and retrace her steps. Why hadn't she thought of that sooner? I married a genius. Noble chuckled. And don't you forget it. Fort quipped, letting his wife know her thought had leaked through. Don't worry, I still got the better end of the deal when it comes to marriage. And don't you forget it, Noble parroted back at her husband. The words made Noble's face flush even more than the warm air from the volcano should have allowed. I'm sorry I missed our first meal in our new home, she told her husband sincerely. The sun had set not long ago and the first of the 3 mesmerizing moons was rising in the night sky. Don't worry, there will be other meals. We did what we could. A pang of guilt hit Noble. Exactly how much had she missed by being gone all afternoon? I hope you didn't have to go to too much trouble. I should have been there. As soon as I get there I will help get the house set up. With her ability, unpacking wouldn't take long and they would be back on track to go to sleep on time. About the house, Fort hesitated. There's something you'll want to see. Noble heard the man's words right as she stopped in front of a beautiful 2-story home. They hadn't spent much time in the more established area, and the professor had not seen anything like the charming building in front of her. Is this really ours? She couldn't believe her eyes. If not for their cart out front, Noble might not have trusted that her emotional sense had led her to the right place. As long as I continue to be a liaison for the government, yes it is ours. Fort opened the door and smiled at her as he leaned proudly on the doorframe. Dismissing both the breadcrumbs and the other's voice, Noble hugged her husband around his neck before leaning back to take in the cottage again. I would not have placed something like this in the dream realm. Other than the stone, it could easily be mistaken for somewhere back home. Noble touched the wall, hardly believing it was real. Back home. This is home now and there's no going back, so I am very glad you like it. I was impressed myself and even more pleased with what is inside. Fort smirked. Oh. Noble peeked around her husband and looked into the lamplit room. Oh. She was already surprised by the size of the dwelling. Her quarters in Ender's Deep were quite cozy, and expecting something the size of Crestfall's palace was unrealistic. But this home certainly exceeded her expectations. And the surprises did not end there. Strolling into the home, Noble saw the excited looks on her 3 children's faces. Welcome home. Brock beamed. I would have made a sign, but I didn't have paper. We are glad you made it. Rain held a plate in her hand. I saved you some dinner. Dinner can wait. Blaze pushed past his sister and took his mother's hand. You have to look around first. Trust me. I am looking. Noble's mouth hung slightly open. The living space had a heartily constructed seating area covered in cushions. Beyond it, a table sat with 6 chairs that were being lit by both a lamp on it and the cook fire off to one side. The kitchen was filled with metal pots and pans, a few of which were soaking in a wash tub to be cleaned with soap. There are beds upstairs too. Brock nodded. It looks like we won't have to be sleeping on pallets tonight after all. He seemed both relieved and sad. They would not be roughing it nearly as much as they thought. But that begged the question. Where did all the furniture come from? A member of Clan Song brought them along with your message and the memory. I assumed you knew. It was Fort's turn to be surprised. Indeed I did not. Did all government members get welcome gifts like these? Noble had seen the street of homes, but she hadn't been nosy enough to peek inside any of them. Not as far as I know. I can ask tomorrow. Fort scratched his chin. For now, we can enjoy the gift and not question it. Noble ran her finger along the back of the cushioned sofa. It was certainly well made enough to be kept in some corner of the Jade Palace. They would eventually get their furniture from storage that they left in the waking world, but even then they had not kept enough to fill this larger space. The extra furniture was a great addition. It's beautiful, Noble smiled. We will have to figure out who to thank. Perhaps this was a gift from Sishan because of her help today. Maybe it was sent to encourage Noble to follow through on her promise to search for the Skinwalker. It's also possible all of the government agents got something to soften the blow for when they find out about Ginner. Whatever the reason, Noble appreciated the pretty things very much. Her mind drifted to the bedrooms upstairs. Were they as pretty? She would see soon enough. But first, thank you for the food, Rainy. Noble took the plate from her daughter. Hovering over a seat on the couch, Noble welcomed her family to join her. Tell me about your day. The boys talked about how they unloaded the wagon and unpacked their room. They were still going to share even though they didn't need to. Rain said she had met a few of the neighbors while trying to get a lay of the land, and before her father asked, she assured him that none of them were teenage boys. Fort took the news with mild interest, but Noble could feel his relief. After finishing her food, it was Noble's turn to take the stage and tell about the Jade Palace. It was colder than you could ever imagine and yet beautiful too. In addition to Lady Sishan, 3 more daughters of Ki Song greeted us. I learned all sorts of things and met quite a few important people. Noble touched on some high points including the scenic lookouts that would eventually be built once the city was more established. They want to make this citadel one of the most wonderful places in 2 worlds. And you know what? I think they just might do it. Despite the unpleasantness at the palace, Noble felt positive about the trajectory their lives were taking. It might not have been what she expected or preferred, but with all the plans being made, Noble could see herself and her family making a life here and prospering. Did you remember to ask about a school? Blaze asked eagerly, his eyes wide with the desire for new knowledge. You just left school yesterday. Do you really want to bring it with you? Brock scrunched his nose. I do. Blaze tilted up his chin. I want to learn all there is to know and more. Then you are in luck. Awakened Azuma is already beginning plans for a school. Maybe I can introduce you tomorrow. That would be great. Thanks, Mom. Blaze's eyes glistened. I don't suppose you volunteered to help Awakened Azuma. Fort teased. You think you are so smart. Noble glared at him. I did nothing of the sort. She rubbed the back of her neck. I simply said I would open an Awakened Academy here in Ravenheart. Fort blinked at her. You, what? Technically it would be a pre-Awakened Academy. You know, for those who want to take on the first nightmare. Noble's eyes darted away. It occurred to her that maybe she should have spoken with her husband about such a big project before talking to Saint Cor. That sounds like a worthwhile endeavor. The ambassador turned the idea over in his mind. As long as you can get the support you need for it to run. Don't worry about that, Noble smiled. I am very resourceful. Can I go there instead of regular school? The other one is so boring, Brock whined. Noble's smile became strained. She didn't want her haphazard son aiming for the spell just yet. I haven't worked out all of the details, but I think you would need to be at least a few years older to enroll. I see, Brock's shoulders slumped. Back to boring school for me, then. The professor mentally wiped her brow. That had been a close one. Noble leaned beside her and patted her son's back gently. Enjoy the boring while it lasts, Brock. Life gets very complicated, very fast. With the way things are shifting, it will take a very special kind of person to dive into their first nightmare willingly. Rain's big eyes studied her mother carefully. What about me? Noble tilted her head to one side. What about you? The teen closed her eyes, stealing her nerves. I'm a few years older. And, well, you've always said I'm special. So can I. What I mean to say is, if you are going to have a pre-Awakened Academy, I want to enroll. Rain quickly laid out her case. I worked extra hard to finish my studies for the year. Even if it is a short break, I would like to try some training. I think it would be useful in many regards to have. Yes. Noble stared evenly at her daughter, ignoring the spike in emotions from her husband. I mean when I get things up and running, you may enroll if you desire. Rain's face lit up. Really? Noble nodded. Really? As much as it hurt Noble to think about one of her children willingly entering the embrace of the spell, she knew it would be foolish to deny her daughter this chance. Hypocritical even. She had trained Rain many times before, though the circumstances were different. At the end of the day, Rain was her own person who would make her own decisions in life. If you want to take that path, I will do everything in my power to make sure you succeed. The professor just wished it didn't make her heart ache so badly. Dad. Rain could see she had struck a nerve once again. The ambassador looked up at her with pain in his eyes. Nothing is set in stone. Taking a few classes doesn't mean I am obligated to take on the nightmare, does it? Rain peeked at her mother, who confirmed that this was true. I just want to learn. I know. Ford wiped moisture away from his face, forcing a smile. I think it has just been a very long, emotional day. We can talk more tomorrow. I trust you, Rain. That's the important thing. Thanks, Dad. That means a lot. Rain laid her head on the shoulder of the man beside her on the bench. Noble yawned. It really had been a long day. It was strange how time worked. Some days were filled with things that would be forgotten as a person's head hit the pillow, while every detail of others would be ingrained in the mind forever. This day certainly fell in the second category. Noble's yawn was contagious, and soon the other family members were also showing signs that bedtime was nigh. We should turn in before it gets too late. She stretched. But Mom, I'm not tired. Brock smothered his sudden intake of breath as his eyes shut. We have a lot to explore tomorrow. We will need our beauty rest. Beyond that, now that we don't have electricity, we will have to be more frugal with our resources. Unless we use one of my memories, all of the light at night will be made by fires. Noble indicated the oil lamp on the table and the fireplace in the kitchen. The latter had burned down almost to embers. Let me show you all how to properly bank the flames for the night. We don't want anything in our new place to catch fire while we are sleeping. Noble led her family through the process, which the others had only practiced once or twice before coming, and then dug through one of their boxes to find candles. Remember to blow these out before you go to sleep, Ford warned his children as he handed them out. I'll leave the lamp dimmed in the upstairs hall tonight in case you need to go to the restroom. They would all have to share one restroom for now, but at least it was indoors. There were only two things that Ford had requested when having the house constructed, and indoor plumbing was one of them. Noble was incredibly thankful for his foresight. The public facilities were unpleasant to use in Ender's Deep, and so a private space inside the home could not be undervalued. After the kids had prepared for bed, Noble and Ford made sure the lights were out before going to their room. For the second time since entering the house, Noble was amazed at what she saw. Not only had Ford managed to unpack her clothes and hang them in her new closet, but he had put the linens on their new bed. What do you think? The man wrapped his arm around his wife's shoulder as he beamed. Noble's hand covered her mouth. The second provision that Ford had made was for his wife's comfort. He had commissioned a specially designed bed. Since there was no spelltech in the dream realm, they could not bring their floating bed with them. While Noble could have floated with a tether like she did normally in the dream realm, Ford had not liked the idea. Thankfully there was a low-tech solution to ease the effects of Noble's flaw. Running her hand along the braided vines, Noble tested their strength. Each one was thicker than her arm and attached to the open rafters overhead. Fabric interwove to make a gossamer canopy that shimmered like stars. The way it hung made it look like a rectangular hammock. It looks so nice. I can hardly believe it. It's a bed fit for a queen. Noble had finally gotten used to her bed at home after years in her pod and a stint in her nightmare. So it was nice not to have to switch sleeping methods yet again. I'm glad you like it. Trying to communicate exactly what I wanted across worlds was not easy. Ford smiled, enjoying the awestruck look on his wife's face. Well, you did it perfectly. Noble called forth the loosened taper so that Fort could place the lamp in the upstairs hall. Then together, they tried out the new piece of furniture. Noble snuggled under the covers and waited them to hold her down. The vines only moved slightly under the increased weight. The professor sighed happily. Like laying on a cloud. Fort pulled her close to himself. Makes sense. I'm here with an angel. And yet something is bothering you. Did I not give a large enough reaction to the big reveal, because I think I can do better? Noble put on her best shocked face. Her antics earned a small chuckle of acknowledgement from her husband before he looked up at the ceiling. It's Rain. This is the second time she has talked about taking on a nightmare. I love her, but I don't like it one bit. How am I supposed to be okay with it? His words were spoken softly, but they filled the whole room. The pair lay there in silence for quite some time. I don't know, Noble admitted. Maybe we don't have to be okay with it as much as support her choices. The worlds are changing and we have to change with them, whether we like it or not. HMPH. Fort wasn't sure what else to say. Hadn't he brought Rain to the dream realm with the promise that she could make her own decision when the time came? I still hate it. He puffed out his cheeks. I understand. We can't always protect them, but we can do our best to prepare them. Noble said the words as much to herself as her husband. Then you better prepare that girl to conquer the world, Fort responded seriously, because she may be crazy enough to try and do it. I'll do my best. Noble rested against her husband's chest and closed her eyes. They both had their own worlds to conquer tomorrow morning, so they needed a full night of sleep. Just before drifting off, Noble did one last check for the skinwalker. Finding nothing, her body relaxed, and she dismissed her candle memory. In the darkness, Noble summoned Helios and gave him a silent command to guard the house. He padded off, ready to fulfill his mission until morning. Thank you, Leo, Noble thought as she drifted off. Noble might not be able to protect her children forever. But for tonight, they could all rest in peace. Noble looked over the frozen plain that was to be the temporary training ground until a more permanent structure could be built. Had she chosen well, it was wide and flat and would allow room for groups to break off with instructors when the need arose. Was it too far from the upper town? Any awakened who wanted to help her would have quite a hike. But anyone unwilling to make the trek likely wouldn't go the extra distance to help students anyway, she reasoned. Yes, this spot was as good as any. It was only temporary. The professor would begin the search for the final location after today was over. Closing her eyes, Noble felt for any emotional signatures that might belong to nightmare creatures or the skinwalker. They were a good distance away from the barricade being built to protect Ravenheart, but it was still better to check. When nothing seemed off, Noble turned back to examine her work. Flags marked off practice arenas and a stage stood off to one side for announcements. There were even targets set up for those who wanted to practice. It all looked in order. Noble had to admit she was pretty pleased with the product. I can't believe you got all this accomplished in just a couple of weeks. A husky voice said, filled with awe. Master Rock, you made it. The Battle Master was now an Ascended Master as well. He and his cohort had safely passed the second nightmare not long after entering, adding to the number of powerful awakened in the world with their success. Like I would skip something as prestigious as this. I wouldn't forgive myself if I missed all your hard work. Rock's throaty chuckle warmed Noble's heart. It's just a trial run. Noble flushed slightly. And the Awakened Academy deserves most of the credit. I had hoped they would like the idea, but I never expected them to throw so many resources into making it happen so quickly. Noble had barely set up a meeting with the administration when questions about what she would need to start were being sent to her communicator. She hadn't even given them her proposal yet and already they had been willing to throw credits her way. It made some sense. The academy was an extension of the government and the government was looking for every avenue to remain relevant as people began to shift into the dream realm. What better way to garner loyalty than to train mundane students before they enter their first trial? Although Noble had a long way to go in setting up a proper pre-academy, she was far ahead of what she could have done alone. This day, barely a couple of weeks since her arrival in Ravenheart, was the preliminary meeting of the pre-awakened academy. We need a better name. That would have to come later. The main goal for today was to gauge interest as well as ability level. Basically, Noble wanted to see who would show up. Part of that depended on the classes she and the school would offer. In her selection process, she boiled down all her musings to one basic question. What did a fledgling civilization of potential superhumans need to not only survive but also thrive? With this in mind, she settled on 3 general categories for opening day: wilderness survival, asset utilization, and navigation. The first had been ingrained in her from the moment she became a sleeper by her mentor and now stepfather, Julius. One could not thrive in the dream realm if one could not survive. That was fundamental. The second category was very broad. Noble could stretch it to include all memories, not just weapons, but it could also apply to personal assets including physical prowess and how to handle different types of aspects. The third class that Noble had decided to offer was one she wished she had before going into her most recent nightmare: navigation. The dream realm was becoming less wild and unknown with each passing year. Much of the topography was now mapped and even the most dangerous areas were being tentatively recorded for others to traverse. The ability to discern one's location based on both the land and the many different skies was not only a boon in any nightmare, it was a practical skill that would serve the residents of Ravenheart well if they should ever want to travel elsewhere in the Song domain or beyond. So even if the participants today did not decide to become awakened, they would have practical knowledge to improve their lives going forward. Well, whoever gets the credit, I'm glad to be a part of it. Rock placed his hands on his hips proudly. Thanks for volunteering to help today. I jumped at the chance. It gave me an excuse to visit and help get more of the masses whipped into shape. Rock unconsciously flexed his biceps. Noble smiled. That's good. I am hoping we can get a steady stream of volunteer lecturers like you until we can find more permanent tutors. Big names will help get the word out more quickly. Big names like Queen Bee. Rock looked at her incredulously. I think you downplay your own importance in all of this. I don't go around bragging about that here. Since there is no Dreamscape or way to watch it, it isn't even worth mentioning. Noble looked away. Well, if you won't mention it, I just might. Rock watched the professor's eyes swirl. Please don't. I get enough attention at the academy for my escapades. Today I want this to be about the people of Ravenheart and their future. Not about me and my past. The battle master nodded slowly. I understand. My lips are sealed. But if someone else mentions it, don't expect me to deny it, he added with a smirk. Unable to argue, Noble turned her attention back to the platform that would be the center of the first event. Already people were gathering around one of the practice arenas near the stage. A herald had announced the upcoming opportunity over the past couple of days. All were welcome to come to the informational, and a brief overview of classes was posted at the wells. Advertising in the dream realm was less instantaneous than a click of a communicator, but it was just as effective. It seemed at least some of the refugees from Antarctica were ready to hear what Noble had to say. She hoped that her words and demonstrations would show them the value of what she was offering. Otherwise, the Academy's faith in her would be wasted. I can't allow that. Noble peered at the crowd, examining them and their emotions just like she did with her students when they entered her classroom in the waking world. Most of those gathered were young, under 25. They were intrigued and excited. Not all of them were in the expected age range. Others were older, including someone who looked to be a grandparent or even great-grandparent. Perhaps he is collecting information for someone else. If the man wanted to try a nightmare at his age, Noble would have to discourage him. Those gathering were all watching something with great interest. Suddenly, yelling began to fill the field. Floating a little higher, Noble quickly realized what they were all viewing. A dark-haired girl was battling in one of the practice rings. Noble felt a knot in her stomach. Rock raised one eyebrow. Is that who I think it is? Rain had hoped to arrive at the opening of the school unnoticed by her mother. While she knew this was technically impossible, Her mother could just feel for her emotions and know that she was nearby. The teen still wanted to be as inconspicuous as possible. Glancing down at her shadow, Rain straightened her shoulders and melted into the crowd. Plenty of conversations were happening as she passed through. I swear I saw a dragon by the palace. Come on, Drill. You also saw one by the barricade yesterday and flying across the far mountains last week. By your account, this area is infested with dragons that no one else ever sees. This time I mean it, Kubami. It didn't look like it was attacking though. I wonder if it was one of the princess's echoes. Imagine, there might be a dragon lurking in the halls of the palace all the time. Rain thought about having a dragon of her own. It sounded fun in theory, but she much preferred her mother's Simkus, and not just because it was soft and purred like she was the most important person in two worlds. I wonder if General will come and watch us fight. I hear he was looking for new people willing to pledge allegiance to Clan Song. I doubt he would come today. I wouldn't want him to anyway. I would be mortified if I knew I was being watched by someone like him. Rain wondered who this was. Maybe he was one of the Saints of Song. She had already met two of the clan's generals. Just how many did they have? But it was the last conversation that caught Rain's attention. I am telling you, no matter how good you are at fighting, math can help make you better. A young woman with ginger hair and a blue scarf was explaining patiently to a few other teens. How in the world can math improve my strength? A boy with rather defined muscles crossed his arms. It won't change how much strength you have, but it can maximize how you use it. The girl persisted. I have seen you practice. Lowering your elbow by around 5 mm will give you a more consistent sword swing. You are just picking a random number, Belle. We all know you are smart, but that is too specific. One of the other listeners challenged. No really. Belle adjusted her scarf. I can do the calculations if you will give me a little time. But I assure you that the smallest mathematical adjustment can yield exponential results. The others began to tease the girl for her confidence, causing Belle's ears to burn. You would all not be so dismissive if you knew how much it would help you. If you would just let me show you. Show me. Rain's words came out before she had much time to think about them. All she knew was that she didn't like how the girl was being treated and she wanted to help. Perhaps she should have chosen other words, for Rain realized belatedly that they sounded more like a challenge than an invitation. Now, Belle's eyes opened wide. If it isn't too much trouble. Rain winced. Her request for help was genuine. She had been lazy with her training since the family had decided to move. Her usually toned body was just the slightest bit rounder because she had indulged in all of her favorite things one last time before leaving. Rain could feel her muscles developing bad habits. She needed to break that here and now with a bit of a wake-up call. Picking up a practice sword, Rain entered the snowy arena. So, what do you say? A tentative smile formed on Belle's face. All right. Rain smiled in return. Math me. I mean, use that math of yours to work some magic. The statement itself was silly. Magic was meant to defy logic. It was guided by principles that mundane humanity would never comprehend. But rather than point that out, Belle took another practice sword from the open chest. I am ready when you are. The ladies faced off, garnering the attention not only of Belle's friends but most of the other potential students. They circled up, whispering about the show about to take place. Rain ignored them. She had come this far. She would see what Belle had to say. The pale teen swung twice in quick succession while the girl in the blue scarf held up her sword in a defensive position. Rain lowered her sword. Well, Belle frowned. I need more data. The ginger-haired girl lunged forward to elicit another swing from her opponent and soon the two were locked in a duel. The crowd, which had been subdued, became loud with cheers. Wow, there really isn't much entertainment around here, Rain noted with mild amusement. To be fair, she had been itching for a chance to try out her skills in Ravenheart. However, finding someone who would engage in a friendly duel was harder than just asking someone if they wanted to fight. This chance was exactly what Rain had been seeking. So what if others were watching? She would give them a good show. That didn't mean Rain wasn't going full out. That would have been too much after her time of inactivity and no warm-up. All she could do was try her best to make her muscles cooperate seamlessly. Instead, her connections felt sluggish, and Vel took each opportunity to challenge her opponent with a hit of her own. The blue scarf waved in the wind like a victory flag, showing the quick reflexes of its owner. The more the crowd cheered, the more animated the two ladies became. Is this how Mom feels in the Dreamscape? Rain wondered. She struck again, hitting Vel on the arm and earning a whoop from some of the more bloodthirsty observers. Vel smiled. If you had lowered your shoulder a centimeter and lifted your arm by 3 degrees before that hit, you would have knocked me to the ground instead of giving me a bruise. Oh, Rain smiled. Let's give it a try. Over the years, the girl had many tutors, including her famous mother. The more she worked her way around the practice arena, the more the lessons of these people began to fuse with her mind and body. It had taken a little time, but it was coming back to her slowly. The pale teen spun and forced her opponent to move contrary to the wind. The blue scarf, which had looked stunning a moment before, blew in front of Vel's face. No fair. She laughed, correcting the problem before Rain could take advantage of the mistake. Rain smirked. This isn't the fair. She refrained from making her father's favorite joke aloud. Instead, she used the pause to adjust her body as close as possible to what the other girl had advised. Vel yelped as the next hit sent her sliding across the ground in the snow. Her sword clattered away. Rain had won. The crowd went wild. Did you see that? For a second I thought that one girl had gone crazy. Instead of being upset by the turn of events, Vel was all smiles. You see, she chirped, tucking her scarf around her face. That felt much better, yes. Rain lowered her sword and helped the other girl to her feet. Math matters. Vel nodded seriously. Before you were fighting like a man. That last swing looked much more like you. Fighting like a man. Now you sound like my mother. Rain threw out the words with a soft chuckle. Oh really? And what does your mother sound like? A voice came from behind her. Rain froze. She had really stepped in it this time. So much for being inconspicuous. Welcome to Fanfic Audiobook, your go-to place for immersive audiobooks. If you enjoy the content, don't forget to like the video and subscribe to our channel for more amazing stories. Feeling her days were numbered, Rain swallowed. She must be a wise and wonderful person if she sounds like me. Vel came to Rain's defense. I did mean it as a compliment. The dark-eyed girl looked away. I see. Noble's eyes swirled as she took in the scene. She had just watched her daughter knock someone to the ground amid a cajoling crowd. At least the other girl didn't look hurt. And she had helped Rain when she didn't have to. That was refreshing. Since neither girl seemed angry, only embarrassed, Noble decided not to pursue the matter. I see you have made use of our practice arena, Noble spoke loud and clear. Anyone is welcome to take advantage of the facility for training purposes, once we get the lines redrawn and flags planted better, of course. The girls both looked down. The red markings had looked beautiful and pristine when they started. Now, the snow was smudged and smeared with shades of pink. Sorry. The ladies both looked mortified, but Noble waved their apologies away. Once we get a permanent facility, things like that won't be an issue. Until then, we will make the best of what we have. The woman with the colorful eyes floated above the field so everyone could see her. I had intended to use the stage, she began, but since you are all here, let me take a moment on behalf of the Awakened Academy to welcome you. I am Master Noble or Professor Noble, whichever is more comfortable for you. I am an expert in memory utilization, but I also have a long history of hand-to-hand combat. I will be helping you with that second skill while also working to keep things running smoothly today. First, allow me to introduce my colleagues. Out of the crowd, a few awakened filtered toward her. This is Master Rock. He is the Awakened Academy's battle expert and will be running a demonstration on techniques followed by some exercises in the far arena. Noble pointed to the indicated location. Rock tipped his head. If you come with me, be ready to sweat. This is Awakened Halo. He has recently returned from a short expedition into the wilds of the Moonriver Plain. He will give an overview of known topography in the area protected by Queen Key Song as well as some general distinguishing marks in other parts of the Dream Realm. He will be holding weekly courses whenever he is here, so I recommend you check back with him to hear more about his expeditions. Noble noted that the girl next to Rain seemed excited by the prospect. She might have been sparring with Rain, but she seemed to prefer knowledge to fighting. The professor had been the same before her first nightmare also. And finally, our third guest today will be talking about skills needed for survival in some of the most desolate places. Starvation and overexposure are just as likely to kill you in the wilderness as an animal. If you want some practical knowledge about how not to die, Awakened Audie is the one for the job. He will be meeting on the stage for a demonstration shortly. The third gentleman with coal black hair and hazel eyes bowed. I will give you as many tools and tricks as possible and point you to resources to gather more information. Noble nodded at the three instructors. Thank you all. Once you have a taste of what we offer today, enrollment will open for those who wish to enter their first nightmare. While it is not required that anyone take on the trial just because they are here, that is the primary purpose of the courses we will offer. A schedule will be posted at the beginning of each week and we will have different classes and guest lecturers as people are willing and available. Noble tried to think of what else to tell them. She could go on about how for now most of the classes would be offered in the evening both because the students would need to carry on with their regular lives and because that was when her lecturers were most often available, but that would be better to do in a question and answer session once the preview of courses was completed. Feel free to stay with one instructor or try all three. Today is getting a feel for what you can gain by studying. We will meet back at the stage in a couple of hours before we break for lunch. Let me know if you have any questions or concerns. The professor smiled and dismissed the group. The potential students distributed more or less evenly, much to Noble's relief. She watched the young lady in the blue scarf split from her friends and head to get a lesson in topography. However, Rain stayed close to her mother's side. Noble raised an eyebrow, though she already knew the issue. The pale teen was still feeling guilty about her faux pas. Rain rubbed her boot in the pink snow sheepishly. I'm sorry, I didn't mean. Which course are you going to try first? Noble cut off the apology. While she was a little bothered by the mess the girls had made of her arena, that was due more to the nature of the surface than the students' eagerness to practice. Rain scratched her head. Oh, I have already had many survival lessons from Grandpa Julius over the years and I can learn topography another time. So I think I will go see what Master Rock has to say since he is only visiting for today. With Clan Song's permission, Rock had come through the gate of the NQSC. When he completed his time with the prospective dreamers, he would head back home and not remain in Ravenheart. Wise choice. Noble nodded. She shooed Rain in the direction of the far field before checking on each of the groups. Awakened Halo had his pupils studying a map as he pointed out distinguishing features and the perils that lay there. While the latter would be more useful during the solstice, it brought no end of questions from the teens. Only the old man with them was pensively taking it all in. Audie had a group of students working to light a fire. Thankfully they had moved off of the stage. While they tried, he explained the best way to break down nightmare creature meat while alone in the wild. It was the third group with Master Rock that was by far the most rowdy. Rock had already summoned his sword and was demonstrating techniques to disarm the enemy, including his personal favorite, a move which involved an upward thrust to the gut. This only works on creatures with a soft belly, of course, so know your monster anatomy. Rock patted his armor with a soft clang. The more you know about your opponent, the higher the rate of your success. Any piece of information you can get on your enemy could be crucial to your survival. So always be ready. Rock held out his sword and grinned fiercely. So, who's ready? Dozens of hands shot up, but Noble could already tell who Rock was going to pick. Rain was in for her second duel of the day. Rock dismissed his sword as he searched the crowd of eager hopefuls. You, the big guy right there. Rock picked the largest person in the group. His massive shoulders seemed broad enough to barely fit through a regular-sized door. What's your name? Soup, the young man offered, straightening his back. All right, Soup. You look like you may have fought once or twice. The master chuckled lightly. Soup cracked his knuckles. You could say that. Very good. He clapped Soup on the shoulder. Who wants to challenge this strapping young man? The battle master cut his eyes at Noble with a slight smirk. Unlike his serious demeanor in the Awakened Academy, he was enjoying himself a little too much just now. Noble rolled her eyes. There was only one way this was going to play out. Seeing such an overwhelming opponent, most of the individuals lowered their hands. They had come here for training, not to get pulverized on their first day. You there. Weren't you the one brawling earlier? Rock addressed the dark-haired girl lingering in the back. The crowd parted to let her through. Rain lowered her eyes as she came forward. Yes sir, but I wasn't trying to brawl. I was looking to improve my skills with a friendly match. What's your name? Rock motioned her into the ring. Of course, Rock was only doing it for the benefit of the group. He had been part of a wedding with her not that long ago. Even more than that, Noble had confirmed the identity of her daughter before they walked over to intervene. So even though she had disguised her appearance slightly by putting on bulky clothing and pulling back her hair, Rock could have introduced her instead of having her do it herself. Rain, sir, the pale teen answered with a dip of her head. You had some good techniques earlier, Rain. I might have even confused you with a legacy. You must have had some good training. Rock nodded seriously. The teen looked up at him with a small smile. Some of the best. Good. Battle prowess is about more than just physical strength. Practice and experience cannot overcome overwhelming odds, but they can certainly help to close the gap. Rock looked between the giant and the petite girl. Even he had to admit it was a wide gap. The battle master stepped back and indicated the chest on the far side of the field. All right, potential dreamers, pick your weapons and get ready. Soup, unsurprisingly, selected a big wooden club. If Master Rock wanted to see his power, he wouldn't go easy on his opponent. Rain selected a wooden sword and shield. Noble hid her approval behind a mask of indifference, but she silently celebrated the girl's wisdom. A good defense and offense were necessary for a balanced technique, and in this duel, Rain would have to make use of both if she wished to come out on top. After shaking hands, the pair took their places and the area around them went still, not abnormally still like some aspect or memory had been invoked. Instead, the world around the arena went still because the onlookers could not help but hold their breath. Rock lowered his hand. Begin. As the weaker party, Rain knew she couldn't wait for Soup to make his move. The element of surprise needed to be hers. She leaned on her back foot like she had suddenly changed her mind about fighting, but it was a ruse. Rather than retreat, she used the footing to spring forward and attack. Good form, though a little slower than what she can do. Noble noted with interest. Rain rammed her shield into Soup while attempting an overhand strike. But instead of avoiding the attack, Soup stood still. If the opponent hadn't been so huge, a hit like Rain's would have knocked them to the ground or at least forced them off balance. From there, Rain could have led with a crushing hit with the sword and quickly claimed victory. But Soup was like a wall of humanity. He not only absorbed the hit, he swung his club at her. The sword's strike was pushed aside as the massive wooden weapon came barreling toward Rain's head. No. Noble braced herself, holding back her powers from activating. She cared about Rain, but letting the Kingdom Keeper attribute interfere would be cheating. So as much as Noble wanted to care about the fight happening, she forced herself to be indifferent. The outcome needed to be decided by the two people in the ring alone. The longer the professor watched, the harder it became to have a neutral attitude about how the match progressed. Rain was holding her own against the larger man, but only just. She had gotten in a few taps and was narrowly avoiding each time the club tried to crash down on her head. She was more agile and quicker. But Soup was not slow. He was deceptively fast for his bulk. And his strength for a mundane was far above average. So although Rain was keeping ahead of him for now, there was no guarantee that pattern could continue. Soup's club smashed against the toe of Rain's boot as she deflected his blow with her shield. It was a good thing they had gotten them slightly big in case she had more growing to do. Since the girl showed no sign of pain, Noble assumed that the hit had missed her foot entirely. The professor wandered over to Rock, who had his arms crossed as he held his chin. I noticed you didn't say the conditions to end the match, Noble whispered. I think it will be obvious when things are finished, don't you? He shrugged. Glancing at Noble's displeased expression, he added, I will give them another 3 minutes and then critique them. There are plenty of other matchups that I would like to try before I pair them off to work on their own. That sounds reasonable. Noble relaxed. Surely Rain could hold on for that long. All Noble needed to do was distract herself long enough not to influence how things went. That task was much harder as she watched Soup catch the fringe of Rain's ponytail. While it brushed aside easily, the glance was simply too close for Noble's comfort. If Rain felt concerned by the near miss, she didn't show it. Instead, she leaned forward and struck the man in the armpit as she passed by his torso. For the first time, Soup winced. That was a good one, Rock muttered. If that had been a real sword, she would have had a good chance at severing his arm, or even puncturing a lung. He shouldn't have opened himself up like that. I agree, Noble said simply. Rock clicked his tongue. Don't discount the effort of Rain. She found an opening and used it. I'm not discounting her, Noble hugged her shoulders. I am trying not to interfere. Ah, I see, Rock seemed to understand. Then may I suggest you go and check on our guests coming this way. They look like they could use a moment with the Academy's headmaster. Noble sent out her emotional sense at the same time as she turned her head. Her face paled. Ford was coming this way. And he wasn't alone. From the upper part of the city, Ford was walking toward the Academy at a relaxed pace. He had someone with him who was speaking in an animated tone. The emotional signature of the second gentleman was just as recognizable as his perfect red hair and green eyes. Already the group under Audie's tutelage had noticed the visitors and he stopped to watch them approach. Noble's stomach tightened. She forced a smile and flew across the makeshift campus to intercept the guests. Welcome. I did not expect to see you here, Ambassador Ford. Noble glanced at the students, who turned back to Audie and the water purification system he was now building from scratch. Ford motioned to the floating woman. This is my wife, Master Noble. I don't believe you have officially met Saint Nightingale before. I have not had the honor, Noble managed. I am pleased to make your acquaintance, Kai bowed formally. The air brushed his fiery red hair against his porcelain face as he lifted his head and smiled. Noble felt her mouth go dry. Just great. I was afraid of this. The professor had only been around the charming archer a couple of times before and not since he became a saint. One of those times was at a concert with hormone-filled teens. The experience had overwhelmed her senses at the time until she was forced to join them in their zealous screaming. Those feelings came flooding back to her now. The worst part, she could tell the feelings weren't hers, but the excited students around her. And now that Nightingale was a saint, the pull toward him was even stronger. Noble's cheeks flushed as she could almost read the thoughts of the teens around her. Sometimes I hate being an emotional radar. Pushing back against the young people's feelings, Noble shifted uncomfortably. Sensing something was wrong, Kai frowned. I hope you don't mind the intrusion. I was invited by a few of the princesses of Song to visit, and the government asked me to also take a look at the city. Ford has been very generous with his time as he has shown me around. When he mentioned the Academy's extension, I requested a visit. If this is a bad time. Not at all, it is just a surprise. Noble slowly pieced together her composure. Did my husband tell you it is our first day? We don't have much to show for ourselves yet. I don't mind. Kai grinned again and Noble felt another assault on her senses from those around her. Saint Kai was known for having a persuasive voice, but Noble quickly realized that his effect on emotions was even more absolute. Look away, ladies. Noble wanted to scream at the teens nearest her. I promise you that he isn't interested in you like that. Kai graciously ignored the stares and continued with his thoughts. I remember my time at the Academy fondly. I hope you don't mind if I stay and reminisce for a moment. Noble looked away as she felt another of his dazzling smiles incoming. She glanced at her husband, who shrugged slightly. As long as you have the time. Not that it will take long. We only have 3 classes going on today. The professor checked on the duel going on behind her using her extra sight. Rain and Soup were still playing a game of cat and mouse behind her. How is the match not over yet? Noble would save that class for last then. Here we have awakened Audie in his lessons on survival. Ah, I wish I had more of those skills before my first solstice. Kai's brow knit. It would have saved me some trouble. Since Kai was a longtime survivor of the Forgotten Shore, Noble didn't ask him to elaborate. Instead, she whispered to the students closest to her. Did you hear that? A transcendent wishes he had more of these lessons when he was in your shoes. Maybe you should pay attention. The young people nodded and turned around, much to Kai's amusement. A cheer rang out from the combat arena, pulling all three's attention. What is going on over there? The handsome saint asked. I am guessing it is the end of a duel, Noble said optimistically. The saint shook his head. No, it's still going. Shall we? Noble smiled tightly. We can go check on them after we go talk to those working on navigation. I'm sure you must have a word or two about how important getting one's bearings can be. Kai seemed mildly disappointed, but he didn't argue. The Hollow Mountains are one of many death zones. I doubt even the sovereigns know what is hidden in their depths. Awakened Halo explained as he pointed to the dark looming peaks on his map. Kai chuckled softly. Did you know I went under them? He whispered so only Fort and Noble could hear. I would strongly not recommend it. If not for someone in our group being able to see with their eyes closed, we wouldn't have made it out at all. A person like that sounds very handy to have around, Fort winked at his wife. You are right. Nightingale smiled. I wonder what happened to them. I guess they must have died in the siege. His expression became far off as he looked in the direction of the solemn peaks. Saint Kai. Fort cleared his throat lightly. Are you all right? The dashing archer did not answer immediately. What were we talking about? He asked when his eyes focused. I think we were about to visit Master Rock and his class. Fort didn't want to make the saint relive painful memories, so he graciously changed the subject. Not yet, Noble bit her lip. Kai looked at her carefully. Is this about your daughter? What about Rain? Fort was startled by the question. I think Master Noble may be worried I will get offended that after my archery lessons with your daughter, she has chosen to wield a sword in combat instead. I can assure you my feelings are not easily hurt. Both long-range and close combat skills are useful, especially for those who cannot fly. Kai's lilting speech was meant to put the master at ease, but it had the opposite effect on both of his listeners. Where is Rain? Fort began to scan the students. Nightingale pointed, and Fort marched in the direction of the practice arena. I was avoiding Rain. You were right, Noble admitted, but it wasn't because of you. Excuse me. Fort. Flying after her husband, Noble slowed his footsteps by making his shoes heavier. But that wasn't enough of a deterrent for the determined father. Finding a gap in the crowd, he dragged his feet through the snow to find his most precious daughter duking it out with a behemoth who was about to crush her. Rain. Fort called out to warn her. But instead of protecting his daughter, the man's cry caused the pale teen to lower her shield a fraction of a centimeter to look at who was screaming her name. And the math, sadly, no longer added up. Soup's club hit the shield and instead of glancing above Rain's smaller frame like it had done dozens of times before, it caught her forehead, knocking her chin toward the sky. Her eyes lost sight of the landscape and then her vision dimmed. By the time she hit the ground, there was no tension left in her body. Rain was deathly still. Fort had never liked seeing Rain fight. He even hated it the few times he had seen Noble spar with their daughter using real weapons. It was too much for him. When Kai had mentioned that Rain was in the ring, the ambassador's emotions took the wheel, rejecting the attempt that Noble made to calm him. Not even the extra weight in his shoes had slowed him down completely. If his wife had tried to make them any heavier, he simply would have taken them off and planted his feet in the snow. She must have known since she did not try. Sensing the ambassador's approach, the crowd parted easily to let him through. And what Fort witnessed had him seeing red. Rain, he cried both from surprise and to warn her of the incoming danger. Glancing his way, the teen took her eyes off of her opponent. The next moment, she was lying on the frozen ground, her face void of any emotion. Fort rushed forward and gathered up the girl in his arms. Rain, Rain, can you hear me? Soup lowered the club and went down on one knee. I pulled back at the last moment. Is she all right? Noble flew over the top of the crowd and descended next to her daughter. Rain was still alive and breathing. That was a good start. A cut above her hairline slowly dripped blood onto her porcelain face. Rain, Noble said softly. The girl groaned, held her head, and groaned again. I messed up. You took your eyes off the goal, Rock agreed. Even a moment of indecision can be costly. The lesson had been painfully learned by Rain, so the battlemaster put it into for the benefit of the observers. You never should have been matched up like that in the first place. Fort helped Rain to her feet slowly. The spell doesn't care about size. Neither did Rain, Rock spoke on the dazed girl's behalf. The spell didn't do this, Fort glared. The spell would do much worse, Noble responded gently. She looked at Rain. We need to get you to the healer's tent. I'm fine. Rain took a step and swayed. Mostly. Fort pressed his lips together. I can't believe that we haven't already taken her to get help. Me either. Noble looped Rain's arm around Fort's shoulder. It is just up the hill. Thank you for taking her. The man faltered as he looked at the small drop of blood sliding down Rain's cheek. He pulled out a cloth and handed it to her. Thank you. Rain held the handkerchief to her head with a weak smile, melting what was left of the father's resolve. Saint Kai, if you will excuse me. I will be back. Kai, who had witnessed everything, lowered his chin in understanding. Take as long as you need. As Fort headed off with Rain, Noble turned to Rock. What happened to just 3 more minutes? That hit was on the 3-minute mark. Without the injury, the match would have been finished. Rock told her evenly. Had it really only been 3 minutes? It wasn't that she doubted her colleague, but it seemed much longer than that by far. I understand. Noble looked out at all of the people staring at them. Soup had returned to the sidelines, getting a few congratulations from those around him. He had fought well and deserved the praise. Are you going to start another match up? The professor chewed the inside of her cheek. Rock shook his head. I think that is not wise just now. I will have to give more thought to how to arm mundane students. I think I might have some basic training armor somewhere. I can get it when I get back to the waking world. In the meantime, look at that. Are those targets over there? Perhaps Master Rock would allow me to give a small archery lesson to anyone interested. Kai smiled winsomely. That would be very generous of you, Rock agreed. While you do that, I will see if I can scrounge some helmets up from the supplies that are already here. The 2 men went to work, and after informing the other instructors quietly of her location, Noble slipped up the hill toward the healer's tent. One of the reasons Noble had chosen this location was that an awakened healer had set up shop along with a mundane doctor not too far from the small plain. The tent would likely be a proper building in the next month or 2, but for now, the thick canvas walls would have to do. Feeling for her husband and daughter, Noble frowned. Where were they? Ducking inside the tent, Noble's perception suddenly changed. There were close to a dozen people in the tent that she hadn't even registered. And the air was unusually pleasant, neither warm nor cool. May I help you? A man wearing a worn-out white coat asked her. I am looking for my daughter, Rain, Noble said politely to the doctor even though she could now sense exactly where her child was. She is with the awakened healer by Director Fort's request. I will bring you to her. The man motioned for Noble to follow. As they passed the middle tent pole, Noble noticed an extra rope tied to it. The gold threads running through it shimmered slightly. Is that a memory? The doctor nodded. My colleague says it is called Lifeline. It shields the wearer, or in this case the entire hospital, from outside forces. That explained the neutral temperature and why Noble hadn't felt anyone within. Her senses must have counted as a force of some kind. Interesting. The doctor pulled back the curtain to reveal the healer tending to Rain. She looked less pale than she had before, as the awakened's deft fingers ran across the wound repeatedly. How's our girl? Noble asked when Rain looked her way. I told you, I am fine. Rain clicked her tongue, then winced as the healer's finger rubbed her brow. I think she may have a concussion, the awakened said slowly. I have fixed the outer wound, but I would feel better if the doctor checked her as well. The physician looked at Fort for permission. Noble could guess that the mundane doctor had wanted to check her in the first place, but the ambassador had demanded magical methods instead. Pursing his lips, Fort nodded. Do what you need to do. Thank you, Drew, the doctor said to his business partner. I can take it from here. If you will walk Rain's parents back to the waiting room, I will get to work. Fort was ready to grumble, but Noble took his arm gently. We will wait for news. Noble couldn't help but notice the storm cloud over her husband's head. So she wasn't one bit surprised when instead of stopping in the waiting area, he pulled her out into the chilly air. Finding a spot along the outside of the tent, he stopped abruptly and fully faced her. His face was solemn, and Noble braced herself for the words that Noble wished she wouldn't hear. We need to talk. What is on your mind? It didn't take a seer with a special emotional ability to see that Fort was upset, and Noble tried to be as non-combative as she could. Unfortunately, the man was too far gone to notice. What was Rock thinking pairing Rain up with a full-sized male? No, not full-sized, that man was the size of a house. Noble swallowed. I can understand your frustration. But she volunteered. And up until you called her name, she was doing just fine. So it's my fault our daughter is hurt. Fort's eyes bugged out of his head a little. The professor knew better than to say those words aloud. What happened was an accident. Why was she fighting at all? The ambassador didn't seem to be listening. What do you think happens at a training school for potential dreamers? Noble was halfway between annoyed and amused. It was just supposed to be an introduction. Fort defended himself. I didn't think there would be any real fighting on the first day. You told me you wanted me to prepare Rain to conquer the world. How am I supposed to do that while coddling her from even the slightest bruise? The professor tried to touch Fort's arm but he shrugged away. A slight bruise. Did you see the same injury that I did? She was bleeding. The man began to pace. It could have been much worse, Noble pointed out. You've already said that. It's like you aren't taking this seriously at all. Fort threw his hands in the air. It's like you don't care about her anymore. Do you care about any of us? The floating master opened her mouth to raise her voice at his accusation. But then the words died on her lips. You know I care, she answered softly. Her palm lifted to his cheek and cupped it gently. She stared into his eyes, studying them before continuing. You aren't just angry and hurt. You are scared. Tell me, what's really wrong? Fort frowned. I told you what is wrong. Rain shouldn't be getting beat up by a man twice as big as her. You should never have let it happen. Even then, if Rock had used more common sense. This isn't about me. Or Rock. Noble knew her husband well. She could read him better than he could read himself sometimes. Fort's stern scowl cracked. He leaned on the corner tent post as his face dropped into his hands. I can't. Can't what? Tell me. Noble furrowed her brow. You can tell me anything. I can't watch our daughter do this. Fort's voice broke. I thought I could support her, push through, but weren't you just telling me not that long ago that you'd let me go into another nightmare? Noble wasn't sure if the man was aware of his own failure in logic or if something else was in play. I know it doesn't make sense, but it's different with you. You've already been through 2 nightmares. As much as I would be worried, at least you would have a team and some experience. You've always come back. Fort slipped to the ground and Noble knelt down to float beside him. Droplets were hiding in the corners of his eyes. When I saw Rain fall, she looked so helpless. She looked like she was asleep. And she wouldn't wake up. I. Tears streamed down the man's face. He choked as he remembered the moment that he pulled Rain's unconscious body into his arms. Her face hadn't been the one he had seen. It was Seb's. I can't lose another child to the spell. Noble pulled her husband into a sitting hug. The words hit Noble like a punch in the gut. The professor struggled against losing people to the spell each and every year at the solstice. She stayed up late watching the sleeping pods and hoping they would make it to safety. But even with all of that experience, Noble still dreaded what might happen to her daughter if Rain willingly chose to take on a trial. Awakened always said the spell was fair, but did she really believe that was true? No. Faced with the possibility of surrendering her daughter to its grasp, Noble did not think it was fair at all. What if because Noble was an ascended, the spell decided to give Rain a trial to humble the daughter of an esteemed master? What if it tried to crush her? These thoughts and more filled her mind as her husband continued to hold his head in his hands. On the far mountains, the clouds grew gray. If the wind blew favorably, another layer of snow would be coming later today. Flakes would fall on all of them, hitting people indiscriminately as they went about the city. That's how the spell used to be. Choice had been the answer, but now that Rain was selecting it, it seemed like a different kind of curse. Legacy clans handled sending off their children, even going so far as intentionally infecting them. But mundane humans had never considered doing anything like that, until now. Fort was understandably struggling. Noble couldn't blame him. It didn't help that any promises she could make were empty ones. So she simply held him and said nothing. The silence stretched between them. Finally, a voice interrupted their solemn moment. "You won't lose me." The parents looked up to see the tent flap open. A pale girl stepped out with a single tear running down her face. "You won't lose me because I won't go." Noble hadn't felt Rain coming. She was supposed to still be in the back of the tent being examined. The blasted enchantment had kept Noble from feeling her presence. How much had she heard? From the look on the girl's face, too much. "Rain," Noble began. "The doctor says I have a concussion. He recommends I go and rest." Rain closed her eyes, blinking away more incoming tears. Fort and Noble stood and hugged their daughter. "I love you," Fort said into his daughter's hair. "I know," the teen buried her head in the man's shoulder. "If you need some rest, I'll walk you home." Noble desperately wanted to talk to her daughter, but the girl's health came first. "We will walk you home," Fort asserted, wiping his cheeks. "No, I would like to go by myself. You have a saint to tend to and you have a school to run. I will see you this evening." Rain pulled away from the embrace of her parents. "You are more important than any of that." Fort took a step forward to comfort his daughter. "Your health is the most important thing." "I know," Rain repeated, her lower lip struggling not to tremble. "That's what makes this so hard. Just give me some time. We will see you later." Noble spoke before her husband could object again. "Take care of yourself, sweet girl." "I will," Rain promised. With a small wave, the girl wandered away from the tent. Watching her go, Fort stiffened. She will be all alone at home. What if her concussion gets worse? How could you let her leave like that? Noble smiled softly. "Easy. She isn't heading home. Where she is going, they will take very good care of her. I'm sure of it." When the couple returned to the classes, all of the students had merged into one large group. Who could blame them? A saint was giving them an archery lesson. Kai's winsome voice carried over the group, enrapturing each and every listener. Noble even noted that others from Ravenheart had joined their ranks. That was just the nature of Nightingale's presence. Getting away from it was hard. "Are you sure you'll be all right being back around him?" Fort asked, surprising Noble. Him. They had taken a few minutes to compose themselves after the emotional interaction with Rain, but Fort didn't seem to be referring to that. "Saint Kai. I saw what happened when he showed up." Fort cut his eyes at his wife and she blushed heavily. "What do you mean?" "Your eyes went crazy, even more so than when you were in the Dreamscape. At first, I thought you were just putting on your master aura, but it got more hectic each time Nightingale did anything." Fort raised one eyebrow at her. No one else would have noticed the change, and Noble wished her husband hadn't either. "It's not what you think," she explained quickly. "It's like the concert all over again, everyone's emotions are messing with mine. I don't know why it only happens with him." The master helplessly dropped her hands, and Fort caught one of them in his own. "As long as I am the one who genuinely makes your heart beat faster." He smiled at her, and the gray sky looked a little brighter for a moment. They hadn't resolved their disagreement earlier, but the kind words were a small bridge both in seeking an apology and admitting that Fort didn't truly blame her for what had occurred. "My heart will never belong to anyone else," she promised. "I'll survive another encounter with the charismatic saint." After squeezing her husband's hand gently, Noble let go and adjusted her armor. They were seasoned professionals, and despite Fort's momentary lapse, he was able to pack away what had happened and put on a diplomatic air. They parted ways when they got to the crowd, Fort coming near to the dashing archer and Noble joining Master Rock's side. The battle master gave his colleague a questioning glance and Noble nodded. Rain would be fine. Rock relaxed and held up a fist at his shoulder to show he believed in Rain's strength. With nothing more to be said, they turned their attention to the man leading the lecture. Kai had summoned his armor over the diplomatic clothing he had been wearing. "I don't suppose he has to worry about dresses getting ripped," Noble mused with no small amount of envy. The stylish suit was both protective and highly fashionable. Noble was pretty sure the other awakened of Ravenheart would soon be copying the look he was sporting just now. The handsome archer brushed back his hair from his eyes as he spoke, garnering a sigh of contentment from the young ladies around Noble. She resisted the urge to roll her eyes and pushed back against their longing feelings. Politely ignoring the infatuated glances, Kai continued with his lesson on archery. "Make sure to stand with your feet shoulder-width apart. Having your feet too close, especially with a powerful weapon like this." Kai held out his bow, and Noble immediately felt a rush of curiosity from those around her. Thankfully this was an emotion she could let mix with her own. How she would love to examine that memory using her spelltech and B2. "Will throw you off balance and hurt your aim. Have your feet slightly turned out like so, and come up on the balls of your feet." Kai bounced lightly to demonstrate. One foot should be slightly forward, and whenever possible, position yourself at a right angle to the target. Kai got in position, walking the group through each step until he drew his bow to the anchor point on his flawless cheek. Then he released, allowing the mundane arrow to land with the cluster of others that had already flown. Another perfect bullseye. Noble wondered how much restraint and precision the move had taken. The arrow was not made to be handled by a saint and could have easily shattered under the pressure of the enchanted bow. Yet Kai had used just the right amount of power to get the arrow to its target and not obliterate the surrounding area with the impact. Few could appreciate just how talented that shot had been. But everyone could see the arrow had met its mark, and the group burst into a round of applause. Kai dipped his head graciously, a tinge of pink gracing his high cheekbone. Still clapping, Noble floated forward to address the illustrious guest. "Thank you so much for the demonstration. I can see why you are one of humanity's best archers." Kai dismissed his bow. "It was nothing. I'm happy to help. Everyone please thank Saint Nightingale for his visit today." Noble led her pupils in another round of applause. "I hope we may see you again soon for another lesson. I would be honored. I wish nothing but the best for all you potential dreamers." Kai's smile was almost blinding. Saints really were too beautiful for their own good. Forcing herself to stay calm, Noble motioned for the Transcendent to join her husband to continue his tour. The two men left together, taking with them the pressure of so many overwhelming emotions. Taking a deep breath, Noble was about to announce the continuation of classes when a deep peal of thunder sounded overhead. The gray clouds that were once in the distance had caught an updraft and floated closer much faster than expected. A single flake drifted down to land on Noble's uncovered head. She sighed. Snow alone they might have been able to handle, but the addition of thunder meant that conditions could grow dangerous quickly. She smiled apologetically. "It seems that we have reached an early conclusion, but really I have nothing that can top a lesson by one of the world's foremost saints. I will stay for any questions you may have, but otherwise, I recommend you find somewhere safe to weather the storm. Thank you for joining us today. I hope to see you again at the Dreamer Academy very soon." The name had come to her as she spoke, but now that she had said it, Noble could think of no other name. The Awakened Academy was for people trying to awaken, so it made sense for those planning to become dreamers to attend a school bearing that name. The Dreamer Academy. It has a nice ring to it. A bolt of lightning streaked through the clouds, breaking up the gathering like a definitive gavel. The guest instructors helped Noble gather up the supplies that might be damaged by the incoming storm before bidding her farewell. By the time they were done, the snow and freezing rain were falling in full force. Thank you all for your support today. I only wish you had more time to impart your skills. Noble said from under her umbrella memory. You can control a lot of things, but not the weather. We will just have to come back another time. Rock assured her. The other two men agreed. Noble shook Rock's hand, wincing under the force. Have a safe trip back to the NQSC. Noble would have seen him back to the Dreamgate or to the palace, but Rock assured her that he could get home on his own. That was good since Noble had something more important on her mind. She had a daughter to find. As the weather intensified, Noble held her umbrella against the wind. Not even the volcano could fully counteract the snowstorm falling from the sky. The most it was able to do was melt some of the snow before it hit the ground, causing the precipitation to be a messy mix of water and ice. How miserable. If she had not been sure of her daughter's location and the rather urgent need to speak with her, Noble would have abandoned her mission until the weather cleared. Though the way the storm had blown in and then settled, the blizzard might last for a couple of days or more. Lightning somewhere overhead caused Noble to flinch. Ah, Ravenheart, such delightful weather patterns. The whipping wind gave Noble an extra challenge. Her feet did not touch the ground for purchase as she moved, so the swirling air currents affected her more than most. Making her clothing heavier helped give her better resistance, and she slogged forward down the almost invisible street. Thankfully Noble didn't need to see. She called on the breadcrumbs and a lovely glowing green path laid out before her, completely ignoring the snowy blizzard trying to blow it away. As she got closer, Noble spread out her emotional radar and confirmed the location of her daughter. I like it when I'm right. Noble smiled to herself. At least her trip had not been in vain. Slowly, the outline of buildings became visible in the world of white. These structures were newly built but had been well made to withstand Ravenheart's harsh weather. Noble reached a place where a sign hung outside by creaking chains. The wooden board was unreadable as it swayed in the unyielding wind, but Noble already knew what it said. After coming under the awning of the establishment, Noble dismissed her umbrella and headed inside. Welcome to Abyssal Fire, coffee shop and bakery. A voice behind the counter beckoned loudly. Oh, Master Noble, I was wondering who would still be traveling in such adverse conditions. Please come in and make yourself comfortable by the fire. The owner of the voice was also the co-owner of the establishment. He was none other than Abyss himself. As soon as Sarai had agreed to become business partners with him months before, the entrepreneur had selected the spot for their shop and began construction. Recently completed, it was filled to the brim with people escaping the cold. Most of them were at tables, but a few were standing or sitting by the large fireplace while sipping coffee and eating various baked goods. Even those who hadn't ordered anything were being given hot water by the establishment's owner. Abyss cared enough to take care of all, not just the paying customers. He and Sarai held that belief in common. Noble floated to the counter and greeted Abyss with a warm smile. The weather might be bad, but business is good, I see. Abyss nodded. I suppose that is a perk of being one of the only permanent structures close to the lower part of Ravenheart. I will be glad when more people get proper housing though, don't get me wrong. While the upper city was full of government houses and places belonging to other prominent members of society from the waking world, the lower settlement was severely lacking in permanent shelters. It was no wonder so many had flocked here for some relief. Well, you'll never have to worry about getting business. People will remember your kindness and your coffee fondly, Noble smiled. Unfortunately, I am not here for food. I am here looking for a special someone. Have you seen her? Abyss tilted his head to one side. Master Sarai is busy at the moment. Noble resisted the urge to roll her eyes. Talking with my daughter, I know. Your senses are uncanny. The shopkeeper didn't deny the claim. They are in the bakery out back. Thank you, Noble tapped the counter lightly. I'll probably be back from something warm to drink soon. Just not coffee. Abyss teased. You know me too well. The master glanced behind the counter. May I? While she could have gone outside and used the back entrance into the bakery, it was much cozier to take the direct route between the two buildings. It's for staff only, Abyss stroked his chin. Then he lifted a hinge in the counter. But I suppose we are always hiring. I'll come clear the tables when I get back, Noble winked. Thank you. The shopkeeper coughed lightly as she passed. I hope whatever is bothering that sweet girl of yours is easily fixed. Thank you, the professor squeezed his arm lightly. It isn't, but I'll try just the same. The back wall held a swinging door that led to an enclosed hall. Each morning and several other times a day, the baked goods that Sarai created were brought fresh into the restaurant. Eventually, the baker planned to hire more staff, but for now, Sarai was working the ovens all by herself except for times like right now, when she had someone volunteer to help. Entering the warmth of the bakery, Noble found the two ladies kneading dough. Two large wood-burning ovens lined one wall while racks of cooling goodies covered another. Sarai had been able to buy most of her equipment in the waking world and transfer them here, making the room look remarkably similar to her bakery back in the NQSC. See, I knew you could do it. Sarai released the dough so that Rain had full control. The teen nodded. It's not that hard now that I have done it a few times. Maybe I could do something like this for the rest of my life. I know you need help. Perhaps. Let's not go making life-changing plans off a one successful loaf of bread. Cooking skills are useful no matter where you are, and you are always welcome here. The redhead patted the younger girl on the back. Noble cleared her throat, pulling the two women from their conversation. Mom, when did you come in? Rain's ears were tinged with crimson. Just now, the professor shrugged. Sorry to interrupt. You shouldn't have come after me, Rain began. Your school got cancelled for the weather. I know this place doesn't have windows, but it's a bit dicey out there. Noble paused long enough for them to hear the howling wind. Your timing is perfect. We just finished with this loaf and we're about to stick it in the oven. I've left poor Abyss in the main hall all by himself for too long. If you will monitor the oven, I can go and help him for a bit. Sarai wiped her hands on her apron before removing it to hang on a hook. Thank you, Noble hugged her friend as she passed. We will take good care of things. I know you will, Sarai chuckled softly. I'll be back in a bit. After checking to make sure there was no flour on her dress, the baker swept out of the room leaving the other two ladies alone. Rain turned back to the task of putting the loaf in a pan and slipping it into the flames. After the task was done, the teen moved to silently clean up the workspace. Ah, so that is how it is going to be. Stepping forward, Noble began helping the young woman tidy up the bakery, even moving the used dishes to the wash tub in one corner. I'm ready to talk whenever you are. Noble handed her daughter a cloth to wipe her hands. Rain frowned. What if I'm never ready to talk? The mother shrugged. Then I suppose you'll have to leave. I can't. I work here, now, you know. What? Rain furrowed her brow. That was the condition for Abyss to allow me back here. I suppose I could quit, but that might not get me a very good recommendation. Noble pumped some water into the wash basin and found the soap. Mom, Rain rolled her eyes, you know he was just kidding. Noble looked over her shoulder and furrowed her brow. What do you mean? You are good enough to get a job here but not me. So, you did hear me and Auntie Sarai. The teen pursed her lips. I was just thinking out loud. So keep thinking out loud. Pretend I'm not even here. Act like you are simply talking aloud to your shadow. Noble picked up the first dish and began scrubbing. Rain gave her a complicated expression. Do you really think that will work? What? I talk to my shadow all the time. Or maybe I am just talking to myself. Either way, I have definitely spoken to your shadow. Noble shrugged. Now you are just treating me like a child, Rain scoffed, rolling her eyes. All complaints about staff can be taken up with the management. The older woman shrugged. Don't think I won't. I have an in with the owner. Rain's tentative smile faded. She came up beside her mother and grabbed a pan. The soapy water dripped from her delicate hands. She stared helplessly at it, her voice small. I hurt Dad. Why do you think that? Noble stared at the water, not daring to steal a glance at the teen. What I want and what he wants are different. Rain frowned. What do you want? The floating woman set a clean pan by the oven to dry. You know what I want. To be stronger. Rain had made the claim many times. The answer was no surprise to Noble. You think your dad doesn't want you to be stronger. Pursing her lips, the pale teen shook her head. I know he wants me to be strong, but he doesn't like the only way that I can truly gain strength. You mean by challenging a nightmare? Noble filled in the blank for her. Rain wiped her hand on her apron and brushed back her hair. Becoming an awakened is the only way I can be strong like you. I see. The master looked at her evenly as the girl began to attack the next dish. Why do you need to be strong like me? What's wrong with being strong like you? It isn't enough. Scrubbing extra hard at a bit of caked-on crumbs, Rain splashed her face. She stepped back from the basin before feeling a towel pressed into her hand. What constitutes enough? The question caught Rain off guard. Wiping her face of the soapy mess, she sighed. You don't understand. I'm trying to. Noble crossed her arms. Will being awakened be enough? Or will you aim to be a master? A saint? Where is your end? I want to protect others. I don't like feeling weak. Rain pushed back against the barrage. I think even the sovereigns feel weak at times. Unless you plan to pass them in power, I don't think that is a good metric. The professor watched her daughter's face fall. Rain plopped onto a stool and dropped her head into her hands. She looked almost identical to how Fort had only a short time ago. It doesn't matter anyway. I won't hurt Dad by taking on a nightmare. You may be better at hiding it, but I don't think you want it either. I would be lying if I said I wasn't struggling with the idea. I don't like the idea of something happening to you somewhere that I cannot help. Noble bent down, floating on an invisible stool beside her daughter. Is your dad hurting? Yes. Sometimes the choices we make hurt our parents, and sometimes the choices our parents make hurt us. Like when Grandma decided to go to Bastion without us. Rain lifted her head. I was meaning your dad's decision to talk outside the tent where there was a chance we could be overheard, but that's a better example. Grandma's choice to leave hurt me deeply, but that didn't make her decision wrong. All choices have consequences. And sometimes even the right choice will have some unfortunate side effects. Noble had heard the reports of how Bastion was doing. While she was suffering from missing her mom, Valor was beginning to organize their mundane people into a society that could function long-term. Lena was doing excellent work. What I'm getting at is that you have to do what you think is best even if it might not make others around you happy. Noble felt a little frustrated with herself. She didn't want even a chance of losing another child to the spell, but at the same time, she didn't want to hold Rain back. No matter what, Noble felt like she lost. So the mother gave the best advice she could without imposing her own will. What if I want to make everyone happy and still do what I want to do? The teen's question was so innocently genuine that Noble couldn't help but laugh. If you figure out how to do that, let me know. I think all of humanity wants that secret. She patted her daughter's back. I guess I have some thinking to do. Rain smiled weakly. I'll let you know if I officially want to enroll in the Pre-Awakened Academy. Dreamer Academy, Noble corrected her. I finally decided on a name. That's a good name, Rain agreed. She looked at her mother expectantly. What? Oh, when you said you wanted to think, you mean now. I see. Let me just. Using her ability, Noble quickly finished the rest of the dishes and set them by the stove to dry. I'll go get some tea and give Abyss the bad news that I quit. Do you want me to let you know if the weather lets up? That sounds good. Thank you. The two ladies hugged. No matter what, we love you, Noble added with a kiss to the girl's forehead as she rose. Thanks, Mom. See you in a little bit. Rain stayed seated, staring into the fire. It could have been to check on the bread, but Noble guessed that the girl was already deep in thought. The master crept into the hall unnoticed. Leaning against the wall, Noble exhaled. Had she said and done the right things? Trying to juggle Rain's and Fort's emotions had taken a toll on her. Neither were wrong to feel the way they did, and that made things even harder. When Noble added in her thoughts and feelings on the matter, she felt like crying. Growing up was hard enough without adding in a decision about whether to willingly head into a life or death situation. How would the coming generation cope with a choice like that? Only time would tell. Looks like I have some thinking to do as well. Noble turned to put her hand on the swinging door to the coffee shop when she heard a question that stopped her in her tracks. What should I do, Shadow? Rain felt a little bad about asking her mother to leave after she came just to check on her, especially if the weather was bad enough for them to cancel the rest of the opening day of school. At least her father hadn't come also. She needed to sort things out before speaking to him. He had looked so hurt. So broken. It had made something inside Rain break as well. She never wanted to have her father make that face because of her. She wanted her parents to be happy, not hurt. Rain's first real memory was of seeing a beautiful lady in the window of the orphanage when she had snuck away from her caretakers yet again. The awakened woman had looked so sad, and little Rain had wanted desperately to see the lady smile. And the moment she did, Rain knew that she never wanted that smile to leave her ever again. Ford later told her about how depressed Noble had been before they had visited that day. He had been worried that his wife might never recover. Rain had brought her back and allowed their family to begin healing. If I die in a nightmare, who will help them heal? Rain might not even have to die. Her father had said that seeing her unconscious had brought up memories of Seb. The teen felt an odd sense of loyalty to the brother she never met. He was the reason that she had such a wonderful home. Would entering a nightmare willingly betray him somehow? I don't want mom and dad to suffer because of me. And I definitely don't want to disappoint Seb. But Rain wanted to be strong also. Strength was the only thing that mattered against the horrors of the spell. Love was a type of strength, sure, but not one that was valued by the cruel world around them. She would need more than love to survive. She would need physical might. And that kind of might only manifested in those who awakened. Rain sighed. Her mind was a muddled mess. Why is everything so complicated? Maybe her earlier inclination was right. Being a baker didn't usually land people in life or death situations. But would she be happy living such a simple life? No, she wouldn't. Sniffing at the air, the teen grunted and stood from her stool. One of the earlier loaves had baked long enough. It needed to be removed before it burned. Covering her hands in thick mitts, Rain opened the oven and removed her recent creation. A rush of heat and the smell of yeast filled the air around her, but she simply set the bread aside, unable to enjoy her success. Tossing the oven mitts, Rain turned away to see what else might need to be done. Perhaps some more work would help her untangle the web of confusion plaguing her thoughts. Instead, she caught sight of her shadow on the ground. It flickered uncertainly in the firelight fueling the oven, looking a bit like it was dancing. What are you so happy about? Rain frowned. Clearly the shadow had all of its problems worked out. Maybe it could work out hers as well. What should I do, Shadow? I don't want to hurt my parents, but I want to get strong. The dark figure on the ground wavered as unsteadily as ever, continuing its celebratory dance. But then, the head stopped shifting and looked, unwavering, in her direction. I can help you if you want. You can talk. Rain took a step back. Of course, her shadow followed her, causing her to take a second step toward the sweltering oven. Whoa! In her haste, she lost her footing. Rain reached out her hand to catch herself on the sizzling metal. Instead, the shadow of the cooling rack sprang from the wall. Dark tendrils wrapped around her arms, stopping her from the imminent fall. The figure on the ground brushed its hands together. Among other things, yes, I can speak. Rain shook herself free of the shadowy vines and gripped her forehead. I hit my head even harder than I thought. You can't be real. Shadows, don't talk. Well, this is awkward. Rain wasn't sure what the voice meant, but then a pale head with dark hair sprang up from the void of her shadowy form. A body followed shortly after to reveal one of the most stunning beings that Rain had ever seen. His porcelain skin was smooth and the darkness of his eyes looked more boundless than the night sky. There was just one big problem. The man had come out of her shadow. Rain fled a second time. Only instead of a shadow, the man's arm reached out and pulled her away from the wall. Didn't I just save you from that? Tisk, it's like you want to get burned. Monster. Rain looked for anything she might use as a weapon. Not finding anything else, she lifted a rolling pin above her shoulder, causing the man to chuckle. Monster. I suppose I am, but not the kind that you mean. I'm not corrupted or defiled, at least not anymore. Been there, done that. Confused, the girl lowered her weapon slightly. You mean that you are human? If you can call someone who is both newly born and thousands of years old a human, then yes. The stranger nodded seriously. Rain furrowed her brow. That description sounds more like a dark deity than a human. Yes, I suppose it does. The pale figure smiled. When he did, Rain felt something change within her. She had seen him before somewhere. He was familiar. Lowering the rolling pin to her side, Rain studied him more carefully. Why would a dark deity be lurking in teenage girls' shadows? The man coughed, looking incredibly uncomfortable for the first time since he manifested from the darkness. Oh not all teenage girls' shadows, just yours. And I prefer the term residing not lurking. He paused, winced, and then continued. As for why, I already told you I would help you with your problem. My problem. Rain had been so startled by the developments that she had completely forgotten that she had summoned the man before her by asking him a question. The stranger placed his hands on his hips. You want to become an awakened without the risk of dying in a nightmare. I believe that I can help with that. You can guarantee my success in a nightmare. Rain's eyes glistened. A being that could bring people safely through a nightmare and help them awaken. The man really was a deity if he could pull off something like that. The shadowy figure guffawed, slapping his knees a couple of times for emphasis. Guarantee success in a nightmare. No. That would be nice, wouldn't it? The stranger continued to chuckle, and Rain's face darkened. So when you said you could help, you were lying. The mysterious man clicked his tongue. Oh no, I never lie. I'm the most honest person you'll ever meet. My assistance just has nothing to do with nightmares. Rain glared at him suspiciously. What exactly are you offering then? The man looked down at his fingernails. What am I offering? Just a new way for the humanity of Earth to awaken. Or, more precisely, a very old way. An old way to awaken. This time Rain looked for her stool. She really needed to sit down. Yes. How do you think the people of the dream realm awakened? The stranger looked at her incredulously. They didn't have the spell. Oh, Rain hadn't thought about it. I don't know. They awakened naturally, free of nightmares and without any outside magic. The dark deity raised an eyebrow at her, daring her to challenge his claim. Of course, she could not. What did she know compared to someone who claimed to have lived thousands of years? Rain's eyes sparkled. Awakening without a nightmare, that sounds like a dream come true. It would solve all my problems. I could get stronger, and I wouldn't put myself in any danger, which would make my parents happy too. The shadow man's shoulders bobbed up and down in amusement. There you go being funny again. Of course, there will be a significant amount of danger. Possibly more than if you go into a nightmare. The girl's eyes opened wide. Are you serious? I already told you I never lie. Is something wrong with your hearing? The man raised his eyebrows at her. What? No. I am just having trouble wrapping my head around this. It was like the stranger expected immediate comprehension. Did he think she was slow for taking her time to understand? That irked her a little. I don't want to jump from one dangerous situation to another just because someone popping out of my shadow has come to me with an offer. Wasn't this how horror films began? But the more she talked to the mysterious deity, the less she feared him. As crazy as the situation was, she wanted to hear what he had to say. The man in black seemed mildly offended. You should be flattered. I don't make offers like this every day. Rain leaned forward in her seat. What precisely are you offering? She immediately scooted back as the shadows moved and coalesced into a familiar form. A chair. Sitting down on the shadow throne, the stranger's face turned solemn. I am offering you the chance to awaken naturally under my guidance. I would be your teacher in the shadows. You couldn't tell anyone about me though. That part is non-negotiable. That is my one condition for training you. Rain tapped her chin. So, you would just lurk, reside in my shadow, training me when no one else is around. The sharp look of the man softened slightly. That is about the size of it, yes. The teen didn't hate the idea of such a powerful private tutor. She would be a fool not to at least consider his words. How long would this training take? Years at least. Maybe longer, if it happens at all. The stranger shrugged, sending the girl across from him for another mental loop. Rain could conceivably hide this secret for a time, but years. That would be a challenge. But there was a bigger problem. Did you say, if? Tilting his head, the stranger frowned. What? There are no guarantees in life. The success or failure will depend on you. I can only do so much. If you awaken, that victory will be yours. What he said made sense to Rain. The choices and effort would be hers to make, so the end result would be because of her hard work or lack of it. With a guide like the powerful being before her, maybe she really could do the impossible. Be the first naturally awakened human from her world. Who wouldn't jump at that chance? Yet it wasn't a decision that could be taken lightly either. Surely there was some angle or additional drawback she wasn't seeing. Once Rain did, her perception might change. But she didn't want to anger the dark deity with her doubts. He seemed pretty sure, but could she rely so heavily on someone who she had only started talking to a couple of minutes before? This is just too weird. Maybe her initial reaction was right and she really had hit her head too hard back in the arena. If that was the case, then this was all some bizarre dream. Rain covertly pinched herself. Then she wished she hadn't done it so hard. That hurts. She wasn't dreaming. This weirdness was really happening. The man across from her stared at her expectantly. She shouldn't keep him waiting any longer than she already had, yet she couldn't in good conscience easily agree to something that even the stranger said was dangerous. How long do I have to think about it? Rain asked after the extended pause. I haven't approached anyone else with this offer, but that doesn't mean I won't. Take the time you need, but not too much. Don't make this teacher grow impatient. The stranger's patience already seemed to be wearing thin, yet Rain still had one big question on her mind. Of all the people in two worlds, why pick me? Had she accidentally called him into existence by speaking to her shadow? Or was there something more to his appearance than just blind luck? The dark deity smiled. There was something very warm and familiar about that smile. It made her head feel muddled for a moment, making her almost miss his answer. I picked you because you are special. I think if anyone can do this, it's you. Why? Rain persisted. Why else? You'll have a powerful, charming teacher to guide you along the way. The man leaned back in his chair and crossed his legs casually. So much for getting a straight answer. How will I let you know when I have made my choice? Will you be residing in my shadow until then? Rain glanced at her form dancing in the firelight. How long had the man been hiding there? Maybe if she got to know him better, he would tell her. All you need to do is talk to your shadow and I will answer, yes. The dark deity nodded. I look forward to hearing your response. Yeah. I'll get back to you soon. Rain rubbed the back of her neck. What is it? Furrowing his brow, the man looked deeply concerned. All this excitement has caught up with me. I need to use the facilities. You won't, follow me in there in my shadow, will you? Rain shifted uncomfortably. No. The stranger spat, disgusted. I would never impose on a woman's privacy like that. I'll wait here in the shadows until you return. Rain's shoulders relaxed as she stood. Then I'll be back. The public restrooms aren't that far. After donning her coat, she hurried out the back door, causing a swirl of wintry mist to fly into the room. It shut just as quickly as it opened, but not before stoking the fire into a tizzy. The light and shadows danced around the room. The man looked at them and sighed, that went better than I thought. He went to dissolve into the shadows, but the moment he did a voice called out. Oh no you don't. A strange muttering of words followed. Then the world went white. Lurker. Noble paused when she heard Rain's question, a small smile coming to her face. I guess she decided to take my advice. I should leave before I hear any more of her private thoughts. Noble placed her hand on the swinging door when a masculine voice answered her. Little girl. I can help if you want. The mother's blood ran cold. Had someone been hiding in the room unnoticed by her? She was pretty sure the back door had not opened, but she closed her eyes to make sure. The room at the other end of the hall was empty of anyone but her daughter. There was no form and no emotional signature of anyone else. Rain cried out a moment later. You can talk. Wait, no. It cannot be. Noble hurried down the hall to try and peek, but the shelves blocked her from getting any view of the room. Pressing herself up against the wall of the hall, Noble resorted to her second sight once more. Her heart raced. The voice, whatever it was, had offered help. Was it the shadow guardian that Noble believed had protected the girl for over a year? Why was it showing up now? Rain was as surprised as her mother, which meant this was a new phenomenon. Strange happenings in the dream realm could not be ignored. In case this visit was something more sinister, Noble wanted to be ready. She silently summoned the zenith. The beautiful weapon manifested in her palm and she gripped it tightly. If that voice tried to hurt her Rain, she would make it pay. That was assuming she could find the origin of the voice. The professor searched the room frantically. Where are you? Her question was answered in the most unexpected manner. The form of a man came out of Rain's shadow, both astonishing and confusing the professor. Something had been there. She wasn't crazy. But that revelation brought more questions than answers, and the more Noble heard of the conversation between her daughter and the stranger, the more concerned she became. At least he isn't a skinwalker. As soon as the stranger had come from the shadows, Noble could feel his emotions. She was relieved to find they were the typical emotions that humans, and not monsters, should experience. So unless the skinwalker or other demonic creature had somehow found a way to mask his utter hatred from her, the one conversing with her daughter was human. He seems familiar. Wait, what kind of person hangs out in a teenager's shadow? The man had just said that he only resided in Rain's shadow, further stirring Noble's concern. A shadow stalker. That was one kind of stalker Noble could confidently say that she had never had. And one she very much didn't like her child having either. Remain calm. The professor wanted to rush the room and interrupt the conversation, but she also wanted to gather as much information as she could. Neither of them had noticed her, which meant their words would be candid. As soon as Noble made herself known, both parties would be guarded with their speech. So Noble listened and tried to memorize every word. It was easily the most interesting conversation on which she had ever eavesdropped. Not that she did things like this often, or ever. That time with Harlow doesn't count. Noble tried to focus. The deal the stranger was offering, Noble couldn't believe it. Natural awakening. Noble had seen Counsel become a master without the use of the spell, but she could never recreate that process, at least not without something as powerful as the portcullis key and a lot of trial and error. But the key is gone and we only have had one chance at success anyway. Was this stranger qualified to do what he claimed? Or was this some elaborate con? Noble intended to find out. At last, the moment of truth arrived. Rain had asked the shadowy figure not to follow her, and he had agreed. However, as soon as the door shut, the man began to dissolve into the shadows, probably to follow Rain anyway. Noble could feel his emotions begin to slip away with his body. She needed to act fast. Oh no you don't. Rushing forward, Noble spoke the names of light and getting brighter. Admittedly, in her fervor, she may have said the second phrase more than once, or 6 times. The bakery was overwhelmed with incandescent white, expelling any hint of shadows from the room. The man who had begun to dissolve hissed at the sudden assault on his senses, but Noble didn't care. She wanted answers and right now not even the most powerful being in 2 worlds would have stopped her from getting them. While the stranger fought against the light, Noble ignored it, using her second sight to navigate the room. A string of curses escaped the irritated man as he moved to stand, but he stopped short when he felt a cold blade touch his neck. Don't move. As the light faded, the man looked at her filled with both shock and frustration. How did you? Don't tell me I've been fooled by those bracelets again. Motioning to the gold bands on Noble's wrists, the man cursed again. His indignation caused the blade of the zenith to brush up against his neck. Oh, Noble hadn't meant to hurt him, at least not yet. Yet no blood came out of the wound. That was as unnerving as it was interesting. Noble had a ton of questions, but the man's words derailed her initial inquiry. Again. Wait, he knows about my bracelets. The woman's eyes opened wide. She was right that his emotions were ones she had sensed before. I know you. You do. The stranger seemed oddly excited for someone who still had a weapon pointed at his neck. Noble searched for the name and found it at last. You're Sonny. You know me. The man pushed aside the sword to sit up, ignoring the small cut made on his palm. It's hard to forget the man who was lurking outside of my house a few months ago. I wasn't lurking. What is it with you ladies and that word? Sonny's expression soured. Is that the only reason you remember me? Noble blinked. Yes, why? I needed to know. The man sighed. The master shook her head and raised her weapon once more. We are getting off track. What do you want with my daughter, and how long have you been in her shadow? If you were listening, you know I want to train Rain, and as for the second question. The man winced. Well, Noble eyed him sternly. I'm struggling to find an appropriate answer that won't make you want to run me through with that surprisingly sharp blade. He gritted his teeth. Tell me. Noble felt like she might die from suspense, if she didn't kill the lurker before that. The man blew out his cheeks, crumbling under the pressure. I might have found Rain after talking to you and slipped into her shadow then. So, around 3 months. What? You stowed away to come to Ravenheart. Noble felt her heart palpitate. What would have happened if someone had discovered the hitchhiker? The family might have been denied entrance or worse, caused a big political incident. That wasn't my intention. I only came for Rain. But you were the one who steadied her when she almost fell at the gateway. It wasn't just my imagination, was it? She remembered how strange it had been, but due to Noble's actions, no one else had seen the save. That was me, yes, Sonny admitted easily. A man hiding in her daughter's shadow. So many things made sense now. And many more things didn't. Another thought came into the professor's head. Were you the one who bit Cade at the movie theater that night? I don't usually bite people. Wait, Cade. Who's Cade? That sounds like a boy's name. Why was a boy with Rain at a movie? Sonny's emotions spiked. They were so strong that Noble felt queasy from his indignant anger. I guess that wasn't you. Noble pursed her lips. The timing is wrong anyway. So you aren't the strange guardian that's been protecting her, then? Then why isn't it protecting her from you? Noble's gaze studied him more closely. Guardian. Ah, I think you are talking about a helper of mine. He watched over Rain while I was gone. Sonny seemed very reluctant to answer her, and yet the words came anyway. More than that, his emotions did not spike. He wasn't lying, which begged the biggest question of all. Why? Sonny swallowed. Because I want to help her. She's special. Noble took in a sharp breath. Her muscles tensed. I need a better answer than that. Why did you select Rain out of every other human in 2 worlds? What makes her special to you? If the strange man was some sort of pervert, Noble would do everything in her power to separate him from her daughter. She needed to make her weekly report to Seishan that she hadn't found any more skinwalkers, so she could mention the intruder. Surely the lost princess would be very interested in knowing about the guest. Even the promise of natural awakening wouldn't allow Noble to accept someone with improper attention toward her daughter. She's my sister. The words were said with such sudden conviction that Noble gasped. What did you say? Rolling his eyes, Sonny sighed. Here we go again. I'm her brother, not that you'll remember me saying it. Rain has a biological brother. Noble could see the obvious resemblance in their faces now that he mentioned it. She lowered her sword. I had no idea. She bent over and offered the man her hand. Wait, you didn't know before. There was a change in the man's expression. His somewhat hateful glare turned to confusion. With a dubious expression, he accepted the gesture and stood. Noble tried to focus her whirlwind of thoughts. Were you at the orphanage with her? The man, her daughter's biological older brother, nodded. I was. Noble felt her chest tighten. She had unintentionally separated a family. They didn't tell us, I swear. I never would have. I believe you didn't know. Sunny allowed a sad smile. I'm sorry. Noble wanted to say many things. Beg forgiveness, invite the man over to meet the rest of the family, and do so much more. But the young man held up his hand. What's in the past is in the past. I am glad you took care of Rain. That is what I want to do now. His motives were pure. That was a relief that Noble couldn't describe. Then be honest with her. Tell her you're her brother and train her out in the open. Why hide? The man in black scratched his head. Maybe someday I will. But for now, this is the way it has to be. Awakening naturally is no small thing. I don't want to attract unwanted attention to her or myself. For now, I will remain hidden. Noble chewed her lip. Have you done this before? No. Sunny's eyes darted away but then returned to meet her gaze evenly. But I know it can be done. Rain can do it. What Sunny was proposing could be life-altering for humanity. And even more life-altering for her daughter. Awakening without the spell, without nightmares. Hadn't she wished for such a thing before? I don't suppose you have a way to become a saint without a nightmare, do you? You could try it on me before Rain then. That is beyond my ability at present. Sunny shrugged. And even if I knew, the process would be different. They stared at each other. I don't like it, Noble admitted. This experimentation sounds dangerous. So is entering a nightmare. The young man held up one finger. Touché. The professor had no good response to that. And I suppose my opinion in the long run is moot. It's Rain's decision to make. You won't intervene. Sunny tensed. As long as you won't pressure her. Noble shot back automatically. I would never do that. If she wants nothing to do with me, I will honor that. The man promised. As sad as the thought made Sunny, Noble could feel that he meant it. Her stern expression softened. I am sure Rain will want you around. And she will want that even more once she finds out you are family. If you do stay, I will ask a few things. I'm listening. Sunny tilted his ear toward her. Respect her space. Don't go places with her that you shouldn't. Noble didn't specify, but the understanding passed between them. I already stay outside your home and any other private place, Sunny assured her. That was good. Second, if she agrees to do what you have proposed, for my husband's sanity, don't let her try anything dangerous until she is at least 18. The young man rubbed the back of his neck with a goofy grin. You and I may have different definitions of what is considered dangerous, but I'll try. Third, and this is most important, please continue to protect her. Noble couldn't be with her daughter all of the time, but it seemed Sunny could. She had sensed when they met before just how powerful he was, and the same aura emanated from him just now. Not much would stop him if he put his mind to it. Sunny's silly smirk faded. I will guard her with my life, I assure you. Thank you. The professor was more grateful for that promise than she could ever say. Sunny looked at the ground. I am glad we had this conversation. Me too. I know you could have faded back into the shadows as soon as the light receded. Noble at last dismissed her sword. Sunny brushed off his clothes. I wasn't sure what other sorcery you had hidden up your sleeve. And you throwing me out of Rain's shadow at a later time would have been very inconvenient. It was better to figure things out now. It is good we did. Noble agreed. We aren't going to tell Rain about this conversation, right? Sunny's eyes opened wide. Dead gods, no. No one can know this talk ever happened. To you, I don't exist. I understand. Noble glanced at the far door. I'll leave before Rain returns, but Sunny, if you ever come out of hiding and want a place at our table, you will be welcome. I believe you, the man responded, neither accepting nor rejecting the offer. I do have one question for you before you go though. Noble raised her eyebrow at him. Ask me anything. Who is this Cade fellow and how badly do I need to murder him? It took a bit of creative storytelling, as well as a promise that Cade was nowhere in Ravenheart for Sunny to agree that he shouldn't destroy the little heartbreaker. If Noble had any remaining doubts about whether the older brother would keep his younger sister safe, they were gone now. With such a protective sibling in her shadow, Rain will never be able to date, poor girl. They would have to confront that issue if and when it ever arose. Before then, they would have to deal with whatever decision Rain made about her future. And speaking of Rain, she's coming back, the two said in unison. Each gave the other a strange look but decided to each keep their own secret. Goodbye, Sunny. Noble turned to head for the hall. At least for now. Sunny had said that he would wait for Rain here, and she would let him do just that. Only. The door to the cafe swung open and Sarai ran down the hall. Noble. I need your help. Where is Rain? Rain. The professor turned around to the empty room. Oh, Rain. She stepped outside for a moment. We can come back when. Rain pulled open the door, allowing another flurry of flakes to blow in across the floor. It was a longer walk than I thought, but. Rain's eyes adjusted to the room to see her Noble pushing her friend toward the hall. Mom, Auntie Sarai, what are you doing here? Were you looking for me? The girl glanced around the room making sure that the two ladies were its only occupants. Actually, Sarai was looking for me. Noble deflected. She pretended not to notice the shadow move contrary to the fire and slip back into the void resembling her daughter's frame. The professor turned to her friend in a slightly exaggerated manner. How can I help you? Sarai looked at the older woman and then the younger one suspiciously. But a crash in the cafe brought her attention back to why she had come. We have an ongoing incident happening in the shop. It's a mutual acquaintance of ours and I could use your help. The redhead glanced nervously toward the swinging door. The mother and daughter looked at each other. It must be pretty serious for you to say it like that. Lead the way. Noble ushered the baker forward. Too intrigued by the development, Rain followed shortly behind. As they entered the connecting hall, Sarai explained quickly. I did my best to try and calm him, but he isn't rational, you know. I thought he was a little eccentric last time we met, but today he has passed into full-blown crazy town. Who? Rain asked. Noble already knew. Opening the swinging door confirmed what her emotional radar had already told her. Oh no. The room was as full as it had been before, but the customers had shifted drastically. One corner of the room was devoid of all but one person. The other patrons did not want to face the elements, but they also did not want to go up against such an imposing figure. Instead, they crowded together in the three other parts of the room. The man in question was hunched over one table with a cup in his hand. Noble couldn't look at him directly, but she knew if she could view the master, he would be wearing a wild, untamed expression. Master Noble, is that you? He called out. Hello Master Chip. It's been a while. Despite the tension in her body, Noble did her best to sound friendly. The bulky man waved his arm. Come on over and sit with me. No one else wants to. Maybe I smell. Noble nodded politely. Stay here, she told her daughter and fiery friend. You might need backup, Sarai argued. In case he doesn't react well to your persuasion. I wanna come too. Rain seemed to have forgotten all about her mysterious protector. Or perhaps like Noble, she had seen him slip into her shadow. That would explain why she no longer felt any fear. I was the only one invited. Noble floated forward. The two ladies left behind looked at each other, shrugged, and then followed at a reasonable distance. Noble decided to ignore them. She focused on the man at the far table. She approached slowly, averting her eyes from his face to keep herself from getting queasy. Sit down and have a drink. The man slurred as he waved at Abyss to bring something over. She will have what I'm having. He slid out the chair next to him with his foot. A gentleman always helps a lady with her seat. I'd stand, but I think for both our sakes that isn't a great idea. Thank you. Noble accepted both kind gestures. The man summoned a memory and refilled his mug of coffee with it. Nothing like liquor and coffee. Such a great combination. Though I think I'm running low on the coffee. The man's breath was so strong with alcohol that Noble felt the inside of her nose burn. I've never tried it. You are missing out. Chip took a swig of his newly mixed drink. I suppose so. Noble cleared her throat. So, Master Chip, I didn't expect to find you in Ravenheart. The last time she had seen the eccentric warrior was after the Battle of Crestfall. Chip barked a laugh. I could say the same about you. I suppose that's fair. Noble accepted a cup that Abyss brought over. Thankfully it was tea and not coffee. My husband works for the government. He was promoted to ambassador in Ravenheart, and I chose to join him. What brings you here? Had the army relocated him? I walked here from Crestfall. Might have talked back to my commanding officer when he said I needed to learn to get past Joe's death. He didn't like that so much, or at least his broken jaw didn't. That was about 2 months ago. Dishonorable discharge is probably waiting for me when I get back to the waking world, but who cares? I mean except for Joe, and she's dead. The drunk man finished off his cup and refilled it with more alcohol from his memory. He offered some to Noble but she shook her head. I don't think Joe was the only one who cared about you. I imagine that Koi cares too. Noble hoped she had said the name of the third member of his cohort correctly. Chip sighed. You may be onto something. He deserves better. Poor bloke handled her death far better than I did. The burly man pushed back his cup, seemingly ready to take a break from his drunken binge. Taking a deep breath, Noble forced a smile. Chip, please don't take this the wrong way. Can I ask you a question? You just did, but I'll allow a second. The man shrugged. That's very gracious of you. Noble nodded before motioning to the other patrons. You have most of the people in here very spooked by your entrance. And the thing they are all wondering, and I am wondering as well, is, whose blood is all over your hands? Chip looked down at the blood on his palms. It had frozen to his skin when he was outside, but now that he was warm again, the red liquid was dripping from his fingers and leaving bloodied fingerprints all over his cup. Huh, I didn't even notice, the drunken master shrugged. Guess I've killed critters like that before. So, the blood belongs to nightmare creatures. Noble's tight smile relaxed slightly. Of course. What, do you think I murdered people and then came in here for a casual drink? I'm not a psychopath. Chip picked up his glass and snorted. Then he guzzled greedily and refilled the cup with his memory. His short attempt at sobriety had ended almost as quickly as it began. It doesn't matter what I think. Noble could feel the man's emotions on the brink of breaking. Tell me what actually happened, please. I don't have to explain myself to anyone. Chip looked her up and down. But I will, only because you asked nicely. I'd been wandering in the wilderness outside Ravenheart for a few days when this nasty snowstorm hit. And while I'm not necessarily the biggest fan of the Queen, I did want to see the town she was making. So I started heading toward that famous bridge of hers. The master's feet stomped the ground as if reenacting the scene. The floor rumbled, making the mundane patrons scoot even farther from the table. Maybe let's leave out the sound effects for now, Noble suggested. Chip grunted. Can't have fun anywhere. Making his feet still, he continued. Anyway, I got past the wall down at the bottom of the mountain and wouldn't you know, some blasted nightmare creatures made it past the line of defense. White as the snow, they were, and so they were nearly invisible except for their black, beady eyes. It's a good thing I don't have to see to find things. The inebriated master puffed out his chest. I slaughtered the lot of them before they could reach the lower village. The battle made me thirsty for something warm, so I dug out a few shards from the beasts to buy myself some coffee. Then I followed my keen sense of smell right here. Chip dumped out the soul shards on the table. They glittered like priceless jewels in the firelight. Noble's smile became more genuine. While nothing he had said had come off as a lie, the man's mental state of drunkenness could have made him believe things that weren't true. The shards were proof that whatever he had killed had, in fact, been corrupted. You came to the right place, Noble waved at Sarai and pointed at her hands. Now that you are here among friends, maybe we can help you get cleaned up. The baker brought a wet towel and offered it to Master Chip with a small bow. I don't really do baths, Chip chuckled, but I'll concede to cleaning up for the sake of you ladies. He took the cloth and began messily wiping at his hands. The once white cloth became marred with blood. Sarai pushed back her braid as she straightened her back. She reached for the man's cup. Let me get you a fresh coffee. It's on the house. Very kind of you. Chip tried to mop the table after wiping his skin, but only succeeded in smearing the red streaks. Rain, could you get another towel while I make this drink? Sarai rattled the cup with a wink. The teen jumped slightly but ran to complete the task. She brought a new towel and helped clean up the extra mess. Thank you, little Sheila, he nodded haphazardly. You are well. Rain glanced at him and her face turned green. She gagged. Excuse me. She tried to leave when Chip caught her arm. He squinted as his vision went in and out of focus. What happened to you? It's nothing, I just. Rain looked away, but Chip caught her chin with a firm yet gentle grip. His face was full of anger. Who hit you? The question caught Noble and Rain off guard. The inebriated master touched the top of her forehead. Thanks to the healer there was no mark or even any pain in her head anymore, yet Chip found the spot with ease. Is she yours? Chip cut his gaze toward Noble and she had to fight the feeling of unease. She is my daughter, Noble confirmed. This is Rain. Rain, this is Master Chip. We met in Crestfall. Finished with his assessment, Chip relaxed his grip on Rain. He turned to the mother and asked seriously. Have you already killed the one who hurt her or do you need some help? Chip seemed suddenly giddy to perform the task. It was an accident. It happened in a practice ring. Rain explained quickly. She pulled away, retreating to the company of the other patrons. The fear in her eyes made the drunken master look away with a sigh. He tossed her a soul shard. You're a sweet girl. If what you say is true, I guess we won't kill them. That's a shame. I do like swift justice, especially the murder kind. Chip leaned back in his chair dejectedly. Noble couldn't tell if it was the alcohol talking or his eccentric personality shining through. After all, the first thing he had ever said to her was about a suicide mission. We will not be murdering anyone today, Noble shook her head. Maybe tomorrow then, the unhinged warrior clicked his tongue. Who knows what tomorrow may bring? Noble answered noncommittally. It won't bring back Joe, will it? The master raised one eyebrow. The professor's heart sank. No, I don't think it will. Then tomorrow is just as terrible as today. I don't need it. Chip waved his hands in resignation. Noble turned to look for Sarai. She should be returning with the fresh coffee any moment. The redhead was apparently having to brew a fresh pot while Abyss served the other customers. One of the patrons was not secretive in his distaste for how things were developing. Why is he still here? You should have tossed that hideous monster out the moment he came in. A patron whispered to Abyss as he accepted his order. Chip's eyes sharpened. His mind might have been impaired, but his hearing was not. He banged his fists on the table and stood. What did you call me? His face became red, and his eyes turned blacker than coal. A monster. Chip's voice lowered, where his mouth had been suddenly elongated to vaguely resemble a hyena. Pointy teeth lined the snout, ready to rip flesh from anything that moved. Chip released a bestial roar. The air around him became thick as those closest to him felt the need to vomit. Even Noble had trouble resisting the man's overwhelming flaw. Ignoring the effect he was having, Chip snarled in the direction of the rude stranger. Screams erupted as he jumped on the table, knocking his canteen and the soul shards from the surface. The bottle clattered to the ground, spilling like a waterfall onto the floor before landing upright. But Chip didn't notice, his dark eyes were fixed solely on the stranger who had besmirched his name. You think I am a monster? His body swayed dangerously. Seems you are in luck, mate. I will show you what a monster really is. Everything happened in the blink of an eye. Chip changed his face to resemble a grotesque nightmare creature and prepared to pounce on the rude patron. The mundane people could not react to how fast the drunk had turned from docile to dangerous. But Noble could. Chip leapt into the air, determined to rip the mundane human apart like the monster which he had accused the master of being. Only Chip never landed. Instead, he hovered in midair, neither ascending nor descending despite his efforts. The drunkard floundered like a fish out of water. Put me down. Chip flailed. No, Noble answered calmly. She smiled at the other patrons. I think that Abyss is giving a behind-the-scenes tour. Anyone who wants to look at the magic behind the pastries you enjoy, please follow him down the hall. Ladies and children first, of course. Noble felt her attributes stir in her, and the people around the room filtered toward the counter. Not all of them would fit in the small bakery, but Noble hoped most of them would be far enough away from the storm outside and the danger inside to remain out of harm's way. The rude patron tried to rise from his seat only to find his clothes too heavy to manage such a feat. His face looked up in panic. "Help! You stay right there for the moment," Noble's swirling eyes glared at him. "I'm not finished with you yet." At last most of the room was cleared of people, leaving only Sarai, Rain, Noble, and her two male companions in the main part of the dining room. The floating warrior wanted to order her daughter to get back behind the counter with the other bystanders, but she hoped that the man in her shadow might help if things went sideways. Though Noble was determined not to let that happen. "Please let me go," the mundane man screamed. "He's going to kill me. Blast it, let me go." The master's voice overlapped the first. "I'm going to kill him." "No," Noble answered both men. "I already said no one is being murdered today. Sarai and Abyss worked really hard to make this place nice and I won't have it messed up with any more bodily fluid." Noble looked to the seated customer with a knowing glance. "What's your name?" "Bick." The man tried to shift in his seat, still trying to discern what had happened to his coat and pants to make them so heavy. "Well, Bick, I need you to apologize. Your words were both untimely and hurtful." Noble felt Rain's emotions spike behind her. Yes, the floating master was treating these men like she did her children, but they had both behaved childishly. "But he is a Mon." Bick fell suddenly silent as Noble scooted his chair toward her, and toward Chip as well. "You know, I have always found it fascinating when people would rather be right than alive." The professor mused. "Fine." Bick gritted his teeth. "I'm sorry that you are a heinous." "What was that?" Noble shifted the chair even closer. All she needed to do was lower Chip a small amount and the master would be able to reach his prey. If the man were sober enough to remember to summon a memory, he could have already taken out the foolish mundane heckler. "I may be here to protect you now, but out there in the city, that's a different story. I'm doing this for your own good." Noble clicked her tongue. Bick was worse sober than Chip was drunk. Chip pushed against the air to snap at Bick's face. The mundane man pushed against the ground, knocking his chair and himself onto the ground. "I'm sorry, all right," he squirmed. Immediately, Noble released him from the pressure of her light as a feather ability. Bick scrambled to his feet away from the menace and his beautiful captor. Sarai handed him a lid for his coffee. "You are not welcome back here. I will see you to the door. You are throwing me out." The man scoffed. The baker nodded. Bick straightened his coat and took the lid. "I don't want to be here anyway. The snow is better than this dump any day." Chip roared, swimming through the air and almost reaching the ground. In response, Bick turned and ran, not looking back to see if the master would follow. "It's all right, Chip," Noble cooed. He said he was sorry. "I'm not even mad about that anymore. He insulted Sarai's lovely business. He needs to come back and grovel. Maybe then he can keep all 10 of his toes, or at least 9. His anger peaked and for a moment, Noble thought she might lose him altogether. If he snapped entirely, there wasn't much she could do if Clan Song or the government demanded justice. He had already gotten on the wrong side of the army. When Awakened went feral, they had to be put down for good, and Noble didn't want it to come to that. Not today and not ever. She tried to calm him with a gentle nudge, but he raged against her, becoming more violent. Soon he would hurt himself trying to get out of her floating grasp. "I have to get him to stop." So Noble used her ability in the way she hated the most. As a weapon. "I insist you calm down." Noble sent a tidal wave of the emotion to push against Chip's consciousness, emotionally pinning him to the wall. Fortunately, Chip was in no state to struggle effectively against a strong mind attack, and the calm filtered into his senses through the cracks in his defenses. As his body slackened, Sarai stepped forward. "I am not upset and neither should you be. People are just idiots sometimes. It's sweet how you want to take care of Auntie Sarai. And me too," earlier, Rain added. The floating man held his head. Thoughts were forming slower than he would like. "What you are saying is, that I shouldn't try to fix your problems for you." Joe used to say something to that effect also. She was always the brains between the two of us. Could see the bigger picture while myself and Koi focused on the details. Chip's mouth returned to normal, not that any of them could see it. I always liked her. Noble had met the lady a few times and always found her pleasant. Why don't we sit down and you can tell me some stories about her? Chip nodded slowly. I'll talk about Joe all day long to anyone who will listen. Noble lowered him to the ground, and when he didn't immediately dart for the door to chase after Bick, she released her hold on his body. You do the talking and we will do the listening. Noble motioned to the two other ladies who nodded. Chip gave her a sideways smile. Thank you, both for the offer and for the help. She ushered him back to his table with Sarai and Rain right behind. The teen set down the cup of coffee that she had fetched from the counter and scooped up his soul shards from the floor. Here, Rain held them out for Chip to take. Sweet, just like your mum. Here's some bread that she helped me make earlier. Sarai set a plate on the table. It should soak up some of what's in your stomach. Well, in that case I can add a little more. Chip reached for the memory on the ground, which had somehow managed to land upright. No more alcohol just now, Noble warned. Maybe you should try the coffee the way that Abyss intended. Spoil sport. Chip grinned, dismissing the memory. Between your calming influence and that quip about my sobriety, it almost feels like Joe is here. Did she scold you often? Rain asked, leaning her elbow on the table. Chip barked a laugh. Only every day about nearly everything. Why, there was this one time she even chastised me for doing the right thing. You should have seen her face when I pointed it out. Eventually, the storm outside calmed and the one that had been brewing inside the fiery Abyss Cafe dissipated as well. Chip was a master, so even the enchanted alcohol moved through his system faster than an awakened or mundane. After an hour of listening to the man, he was starting to sound more like himself. Chip drank more coffee and ate more bread than most of the rest of the shop, but he insisted on giving over all his recently harvested soul shards as compensation. I'll get more, he explained. If I can't get justice for living people, I'll just keep killing every nightmare creature I can find to avenge Joe. The stronger, the better my strength is tied to the abominations I kill. So you aren't staying in town? Noble wasn't sure what answer to hope for. The man was a loose cannon and was adrift without his anchor. In town, he might have trouble with the locals after his display today, but out in the wilderness, she feared for his sanity. I will come from time to time, especially now that I know there is good coffee to sober me up. Chip raised his cup in a small toast. Wouldn't it be better to not drink at all? Rain tilted her head at him. It would, little Sheila. But I can't and won't promise to stop. Asking me to stop is like asking a fish to breathe out of water. Impossible. The strange master chuckled sadly. Rain opened her mouth to ask why, but Noble shook her head slowly. Making him explain might trigger him all over again, and Noble didn't want to have to exert her powers over him a second time. Having seen what a capable fighter Chip was in the battle for Crestfall, Noble wasn't keen to fight the other master when he was more sober-minded. We want the best for you, Noble patted his arm gently. And I thank you for it, but you all should be pouring your time into this promising young Sheila and not some old wildman like me. Chip winked at the teen. I am rightly at the bottom of the priorities list. Clearing his throat, he pushed back his chair and stood. I have used up enough of your day with my ramblings. I'll be on my way. You are welcome here anytime. Sarai stood and offered him a hug. Your generosity is appreciated. Who knows? Maybe a miracle will happen. I might decide to do something crazy like settle down and come looking for a job. Chip shrugged. That reminds me. Abyss. I quit. Noble said to the shopkeeper as he passed by with a tray. Can't keep good help these days. The awakened sighed amiably. Don't be a stranger. The same goes for you. Sarai told Chip. If you stick around Ravenheart, drop in and let us know you are well. You have a friend in me, the former soldier promised. Speaking of friends, you may want to reach out to Koi. I am sure he would like to hear from you. I can point you to the gateway here. Noble realized that she had no idea which way it was from inside the building. Thank you, but I think I can find the big pointy black place on my own, Chip chuckled. I'll be on my way. The master shouldered his pack and made a modified salute. He headed toward the door, the remaining customers giving him a wide berth as he did so. Touching the frame for good luck, he stopped in the doorway. I meant what I said about that girlie of yours, Noble. She's special, I can promise you that. Treasure her. I do. Noble wrapped her arm around her daughter and squeezed her gently. The man nodded his approval. Till we meet again. The door opened and Chip trod into the freshly fallen snow. Most of it would either melt or become part of the permafrost in the next few days, but for now, it was piled high in drifts. The storm has passed, Sarai noted with some relief. I figured it had when people started to filter out, but it is nice to know for sure. It's been a crazy day, Noble winced at her choice of words. I meant the weather and the opening day of the academy this morning, though this afternoon has been extra memorable. The professor glanced at Rain's shadow. I didn't even get to ask you how things went. Sarai pressed her hand to her cheek. It's all right. I need to go home and you probably want to get back to baking. Our friend made a serious dent in your inventory. Noble looked at the nearly empty display case behind the counter. It is nice to have my work appreciated, Sarai blushed. We will catch up soon, then. Noble hugged her friend. Absolutely. Bye Auntie, Sarai. Thanks for listening and for the advice. Rain received an embrace as well. You can always keep me company in the bakery, the redhead clapped her hands. The mother and daughter headed into the street. The snow shushed softly under Rain's feet. Noble floated over it, wondering briefly if it would count as ground if she let her feet drag through it. Some people might find it odd that she left no footprints, but now that it was out in the open that Noble could float, she could always say she didn't want to get her feet wet. You think the boys did all right in this bad weather? Rain asked as they headed home. If I was worried about them, I wouldn't have stayed after checking that you were with Sarai. Noble shrugged. While the school was being constructed, Elder Azuma had gathered classes to meet in the homes of government officials. Her twins had been with their new teacher for the duration of the storm. If anything, Noble felt bad for the teacher who would have needed to deal with the squirrely youth during the blizzard. They are probably outside our house building a snowman as we speak. The professor spread her search for her children. They were up ahead somewhere, but Noble could not say exactly where the boys were playing. That's good. That sounds relaxing. Rain sighed. We can build one too, if you like. A small bit of snow lifted from the ground and flew into Noble's palm. Or we could make a snow fort and have a war. Rain ducked away from the lobbed ball and tossed back one of her own. It went wide, redirected by some invisible force. No wars for me. I've had enough fighting for today. I want to do something mind-numbing while I think. You can help me do laundry after we make dinner. That isn't exactly a task that requires many brain cells. Sounds good to me, Rain answered, tossing a returning ball of snow toward her mother. This one flew upward and then landed back at the teen's feet. I thought you didn't want a war. Noble narrowed her gaze. Maybe a little skirmish. Rain grinned. The women rushed along the street, tossing balls of fluff in each other's directions. By the time they reached the house, both ladies were covered in an appropriate amount of white dusting. That was fun. Noble brushed the newest spray from her shoulders. It was nice to see your evasion skills outside of the practice ring. I wouldn't mind seeing that more often. Yeah. Rain's smile faded as she fell into thought. Hey, Mom. I wanted to talk to you about something that happened today. What do you think about? Noble's face changed as she grabbed a hold of her daughter. Watch out. Pulling her daughter out of the way, Noble narrowly avoided an avalanche of snow from their roof. The professor noticed a small contraption only a moment before the trap was sprung. Rather than try to hold back every particle of snow, Noble had opted to move Rain and herself out of harm's way. The snowy dump cascaded onto the front porch, creating a pile nearly as high as Noble was tall. The door swung open. Did it work? Brock's eager voice chirped as he looked into the white world. Whoa, you cleared the whole roof. Amazing. What? It was only supposed to be a little snow. Blaze covered his mouth. He pressed against the mound experimentally. Rain, can you hear us? Are you mad? I'm certainly not happy. Rain rose to her feet and crossed her arms. How did you? Brock peeked around the pile and saw his sister next to a figure with swirling eyes. His face filled with dread. "Run!" Brock's less than helpful cry failed as his feet lifted off of the ground. Both boys struggled against their fate as they floated past their handiwork and into the open air. Their boots touched the ground before becoming suddenly heavy. "Boys!" Noble let the word hang in the air. Under the gaze of his mother and angry older sister, Blaze quickly cracked. It was Brock's idea. He wanted to prank Rain. It was just supposed to be a little snow. "I swear we didn't know you were there, Mom. My idea. You were the one who rigged the device. I just installed it." Brock scowled. "I told you that you put that last pulley in the wrong place." Blaze tilted up his chin. The elder twin scoffed. "Well, if you had lifted me higher on the roof, then I wouldn't have had to reach so far too. You climbed on the roof, and you lifted him." Noble cut off their bickering with a gasp. She looked up at the second story. "Just a bit," Brock shrugged. "We didn't fall or anything." Above their heads, the curtains to the front room were pulled back and the snow on the sill had 2 indents where knees had once been. Noble felt her heart skip a beat. "You could have broken your necks. You could have broken Rain's neck. She was already in an accident today, you know." The twins stopped sticking their tongues out at each other and looked at their sister with worried expressions. At that moment Fort hurried out of the house, wiping ink from his hands. He looked at the pile on his porch with wide eyes. "What happened?" "The boys tried to dump snow on Rain and went way overboard," Noble explained before the twins could. "It was an accident." Blaze held up his hands. "A semi-intentional accident, but still." The ambassador turned a critical eye on his boys. "When I said entertain yourselves while I finish up my reports, this is not what I meant." He turned to his daughter. "Are you all right? How's your head? Is anything broken?" "I'm fine. Mom moved me out of the way. I'm not made of glass, you know." Rain resented being treated like she might break, but even she had to admit that amount of snow would have been unpleasant on her newly healed skull. Fort's worried expression became filled with shame. "I'm sorry that the men of this house have caused you and your mom so much trouble today. Me in particular." He gave his daughter and wife a meaningful look. "It was wrong of me too. Like I said, it's fine, Dad." Rain's face softened. "I know you and the boys didn't meant to hurt me. Accidents happen. Are you sure?" Fort chewed his lip. The teen looked at her mother, who nodded slowly in agreement. "We are sure. Cut yourself and these numbskulls a break. Accident or not, it is important to fix our mistakes. And you boys will fix this." Fort went inside the house and retrieved 2 shovels. "Clear the porch and then break up any ice in the water supply." The boys looked at the mountain of work with a sigh. "Sorry for almost killing you, sis." Brock accepted the shovel. "Yeah, next time we will make sure the force is less than lethal before trying it on humans." Blaze raised his hands in promise. Fort squinted, looking at the roof. "That's what you built. I see the problem. Your angles are off. That pulley should be higher. I told you." Blaze waved his arms. Then he looked at the stern gaze of his mother, "that we should never have tried such a trick on our most loving sister." Noble's fierce eyes swirled. "You boys forgot one very crucial detail when it comes to snow." The boys looked at her curiously as Fort and Rain nodded and lowered their heads. "What's that?" Brock asked at last. "I'll pose it as a question. What do you call a pile of snow that lands at your opponent's feet?" Noble's lips twisted into a mischievous grin. "Ammunition." Balls pelted the twins from both their sister and their parents. Noble didn't even use her aspect, taking balls lovingly crafted by her daughter and throwing them with her own 2 hands. Outnumbered and outmaneuvered, the twins were eventually forced to surrender. They picked up their shovels for a second time to clear the porch, this time with huge smiles on their faces. The other 3 came inside to change out of their wet clothes and prepare for the evening activities. Dinner was made and served when the youngest members of the family finally finished their tasks outdoors. Blaze and Brock talked so much about their day and the storm that the others barely had the chance to get a word in. Most of the rest of the meal was spent with Fort describing his morning with Saint Kai, followed by Rain describing her poorly ended duel. No spell tech or other entertainment took any attention away from the moment. The family was completely engrossed in the endless conversation. Noble sat in happy silence watching the lively group. She really was one of the luckiest people in two worlds. The house they had moved into only 2 short weeks ago was starting to feel like a home. That made sense. Home was where her family was. There was a certain charm to this simple life. She didn't love the idea of washing clothes by hand, but maybe, just maybe the trade-off was worth it. Though I do wish Mom could see all this. Noble would have to seek out Julius and check on them both next time she was in the waking world. Maybe someday the women would be able to reunite, but for now, they would have to exchange messages through the lovable teacher. After dinner, the young men cleared the table while their father did the dishes. Then the ladies set to work getting their dirty clothing washed. A tub was filled with hot water using a pump in the kitchen. Dumping in the clothes and some detergent, Rain added a long pole with paddles and sealed the lid. Then she began to turn the handle to spin the laundry while her mother looked on. I can do that with my ability if you like, Noble offered. You may want to save your energy for any stains that get left behind. With your brothers, there will be many. Rain nodded, releasing the handle. It continued to spin quietly, allowing the women to watch the movement as they waited for it to be complete. How long will it take? Rain asked. This was only their second time going through this process, and the teen hadn't been around for the first. A while, Noble answered noncommittally. Do you have something else you need to do? Rubbing her neck, Rain looked away. No. But there was something I wanted to ask you about. Ask me anything, Noble smiled at her daughter. Rain shifted awkwardly as if she might not ask the question after all. But then she nodded to herself. What do you know about natural awakening? Natural awakening. Ford looked up from checking his son's math by the fire. What's that? Brock pushed his feet against the couch cushion until his head was hanging off the back like a bat. He looked curiously at his sister in the kitchen. Is it like awakening in a forest setting or something? Rain winced. She had been on the fence about asking at all, and she certainly hadn't meant to draw her father's and brother's attention. Not exactly, the teen bit her lip. It means trying to become awakened without going into a nightmare, Noble answered matter-of-factly. Is that even possible? Blaze turned and sat on his knees to look over the couch as well. In our world, no. It's never been done. The professor shook her head. It's getting late, boys. Get ready for bed before all 3 moons are overhead. Rain had already been given wild ideas today by a shadowy stranger. She didn't need that curiosity infecting Brock and Blaze as well. The incoming complaints were met with a stern gaze from their father. If you want to stay up, I am sure your mother and sister would love some help with scrubbing the stains out the clothes from your adventure from Monday. Both boys froze. When they had come home that day, their mother had warned them that the volcanic ash might never come out. Faced with an entire night of scrubbing, Brock and Blaze reluctantly headed upstairs, leaving the eldest 3 members of the family to speak more privately. Seeing his wife's pleading look, Ford went back to checking the papers. The pen moved across the page aimlessly as he stared at the work. Noble returned her attention to her daughter. What do you want to know about natural awakening? She glanced reflexively toward the closest window. The glass was shut and the curtains were pulled tight. Rain's brother had said he didn't come into their house, but did he listen to their conversations by other means? I suppose I won't find out unless I make him upset enough to intervene. The only way Noble thought she might do that was by mentioning Sunny directly, and the mother had no intention of outing him just now. Anything you know, Rain answered vaguely. In my last nightmare, there was a group called the Hopefuls. They were people who were actively trying to form their core to awaken. Forming a core, Rain mumbled. How does that even work? Noble smiled. She had wondered something similar. I'm not sure, but I was told that increasing their essence control would help them form their core faster. All of that was information that Noble would have offered without having met Sunny, so she saw no reason to hide it. The knowledge had been curious to her at the time, and now saying it aloud, she mulled over it a second time. Do you think that's true? Rain seemed very deep in thought. Unless the spell doesn't actually recreate events of the past, I believe that is what happens, yes. Noble didn't doubt that what she had seen was the case. Yet, there wasn't any method mentioned on how to get control of soul essence, so the information was mostly theoretical and not actionable. But Sunny. Noble went over her interactions with him. He believed he could help Rain awaken. He was at least a saint. How was that even possible? How much older was he than Rain? Ages were extra hard to determine with the awakened population, but Noble couldn't believe he was more than 5 years older, maybe 7. He couldn't have been more than 10 years her superior, or the government would have put Rain in his care instead of her ending up at the orphanage. That was the sad reality of the outskirts. Becoming a saint under the age of 30. That was not for the faint of heart. If she had learned a little about natural awakening in her nightmares, perhaps he had learned much more. That would explain his quiet confidence. Unaware of her mother's thoughts, Rain was following a track of her own. If it happened in the past, do you think, is it possible that it could happen again? That people could awaken the old way, I mean. We live in a world that 100 years ago no one even knew existed. There is magic all around us, and I have superpowers. Anything is possible. Noble stopped the churning handle and opened the lid to check on the wet clothes. She frowned. As she had suspected, the dark ashy stains on her son's shirts were not coming out in the warm water. It would be a long night. Anything is possible, Rain repeated to herself. Noble felt the hope blossoming within her daughter, so she was not surprised by the next question. So, hypothetically, if someone wanted to try to awaken naturally, would you be upset if they decided not to join the Dreamer Academy, at least for now? Rain's eyes darted toward the window, and Noble did not have to guess that she was also thinking of the man in her shadow. I didn't stop you from joining us, and I won't stop you from taking as long of a break as you need, even if that break is permanent. Noble glanced toward the couch. And I know your father feels the same. Ford looked up from the paper. Did someone mention me? Rain rolled her eyes. You've been on the same problem this whole time. We know you were listening. If you are talking about my daughter giving up a dangerous training regimen for a life of something that sounds like meditation, no, I didn't hear a thing. But if I did, I would approve wholeheartedly. Ford turned over the page nonchalantly. Your father's opinion aside, don't do anything without giving it a lot of thought. It's your life, and we want you to have the choice of the best way to spend it. This was the best advice Noble could give. Years of training in either avenue would have a cost. Which price would Rain be willing to pay in the end? I understand. Rain picked up one of the boy's shirts and a bar of soap. She joined her mother in attacking the back stains marring the sleeves of Brock's shirt. Tell me more about these hopefuls. They sound interesting. Noble smiled and regaled her daughter with all she knew. Of all the things that had happened in that harrowing ordeal, learning more about the hopefuls had been one of the more interesting. The ladies talked late into the night until even Fort gave up on eavesdropping. However, when Noble finally got to bed, the ambassador had a big smile on his face. You seem happy, the floating woman chuckled as she climbed under the blanket. Why wouldn't I be? You talked our daughter out of a life of fighting and into the life of a monk. The man laid back on the hanging bed and sighed contently. Noble's smile froze on her face. Ford had gotten the wrong idea. She had to tell him. But how? Wasn't the reason Rain is considering trying something that no one has ever done before? Noble looked at her husband in the lingering light of her lucent taper. You are. What do you mean? Ford scrunched his brow. Have you forgotten earlier today? The brunette master frowned. Because I remember it quite clearly. Oh, Ford tugged at the blanket. That. Yes, I remember. I can't apologize enough for that. I was out of line to ever suggest you don't care. You care more than I'll ever be able to understand. Noble felt his sincerity and she smiled softly. I forgive you. You were having a panic attack. I had no idea that the memory of Seb still caused you such pain. Because of his wife's depression, Ford had never gone through a proper mourning period for his eldest son. Maybe you should visit a therapist. Noble suggested. It couldn't hurt. Maybe you're right. I'll look into it in the morning. I should never have snapped at you like that. You are my safe place. The husband held his wife's gaze. Thank you. I love you. Noble sighed, wishing she could drop the matter. She continued, but this conversation wasn't about me. It was about Rain. Whether or not you meant for Rain to hear them, your words had a profound effect on our daughter. She is terrified of hurting us. Of hurting you in particular. Noble felt Fort's emotions plummet. She said that. Nodding, Noble patted her husband's arm. She did. I apologized and she said she was fine. Rain was so happy during the snowball fight and at dinner. She didn't show any sign of being upset anymore. I assumed she had let it go like she said. Fort paused, considering his own words. But teens don't really do that, do they? Not usually, no. The lady graced him with a sad smile. So rather than insist on taking on a nightmare, Rain jumped to a solution that she thought might make us both happy. She wants to try and achieve something that none in the waking world has ever done, and all because of me. That's about the size of it. Noble laid back on her pillow and looked at the canopy overhead. That sweet, crazy girl. The ambassador pressed his hands to his forehead. Where did Rain even hear about natural awakening? You said she went to talk to Sarai. Was it her idea? No, I don't think so. Noble struggled to get comfortable. Is it getting hotter in here? I know you didn't give her the idea, the father continued to think aloud. You are correct. I did not. Noble yawned. It's been a long day. Good night. Dismissing the candle, the tired professor rolled over and pulled the covers up to her chin. She had just finished weighting it properly when a single word broke through the silence. B. The one word broke Noble 100 different ways. She didn't like hiding things from her husband. Was there a way to tell him what he needed to know without breaking her understanding with Sunny? They had agreed that their conversation had not taken place and that to her Sunny didn't exist. So what could she say? I know you didn't fall asleep that fast. Fort continued in the darkness. I didn't, she confirmed. And you know where Rain got this crazy idea about awakening naturally? The man pressed. Noble shut her eyes tightly, her mind racing. You remember how I keep saying that Rain has this protection around her? I do. You think it might be some sort of snake because Rain said something bitcade. Even in the darkness, Noble knew her husband's face scowled when he said the boy's name. Fort sat up suddenly. Wait, are you saying it's real? What if I was? Noble chewed her lip nervously. You are saying a serpent told Rain about natural awakening. Not exactly. And I believe I called it a guardian. The professor could feel she was getting onto dangerous ground. Before you ask any more questions, all I can tell you is that whatever Rain decides to do, she won't be alone. But, Noble found her husband's lips in the darkness. It was a little unfair, she had to admit, but the taste of his kiss pushed away any guilt she felt. You'll have to trust me. I'll tell you what I can when I can. For now, just be happy that Rain is keeping her options open and not jumping into a nightmare like you feared. I don't want her getting in harm's way, the man admitted. I want her safe forever. That's an unrealistic request. Noble clicked her tongue. I think natural awakening will run her into a fair share of danger as well. That's not comforting, Fort frowned. Isn't there any path that doesn't lead to her being reckless? I don't think so, Noble scratched her head, but maybe you can get her to promise not to try anything too dangerous until she is at least 18. Noble had asked the same thing of Sunny. Perhaps if both siblings promised, they might actually be able to manage it. Fort calmed with her suggestion. That's a good idea. It will give me a little more time to get my mind wrapped around the fact that she isn't my little girl. I will mention it when I go talk to her, which I suppose I should do sooner rather than later. Is she still awake? Noble felt for her daughter's emotions with her second sight. The teen was tossing in her bed. Noble felt compassion for the young lady. Rain certainly had a lot on her mind. I don't think she will be sleeping much tonight. Then I will try and take one worry off of her mind. But first, Fort kissed his wife and then pressed his forehead against hers. Tell me this, natural awakening, the process is safer than facing a nightmare, right? Noble shrugged. I've no idea what all it entails. You have heard everything I know. But Rain's guardian knows. Fort arched his brow. Nice try. You will not trick me into revealing something I shouldn't. Noble tapped her husband's nose. You already did, he leaned back with a satisfied sigh. As long as Rain is safe, that is what matters. He pushed the covers back from his side of the bed. I'll sort things out with our daughter and sit with her if she needs it. She is going to think you are still worried about her possible concussion. Noble summoned her memory candle and handed it to her husband. And what if I am? Fort challenged. Then don't ask her about the man who visited and almost destroyed Sarai's cafe today. You will think she is hallucinating. Noble chuckled. I'll keep that in mind. The ambassador paused. Be honest with me. Are you worried about Rain? The question encompassed more than just whether Noble was concerned about her daughter's head. Noble smiled softly. I always worry about her and for her, ever since the moment I met her. But right now with the way things are, I think Rain may be safer than she has ever been. That's good. Fort nodded. I'll go speak to Rain. Who knows? Maybe that snake will talk back to me. Noble opened her mouth to correct him and snapped it shut. She clicked her tongue. If you try talking to snakes, your daughter is going to think you are the one with a concussion. Fine, Fort conceded. I won't mention anything we spoke about. Thank you. Noble already knew this was the case, but it was still nice to hear it. I love you. I love you more, Fort shot back, exiting the room before his wife could respond. You won't get away that easy. Noble sent a wave of affection toward his retreating form. As the light faded down the hall, she felt her gift be accepted. Left with only the darkness as her companion, Noble lay down on her bed. Fort and Rain would work out their problem, or at the very least they would discuss it. Maybe Fort would share about Seb, or maybe he would focus on getting the promise out of Rain that Noble had suggested. Whatever was going on in the other room, both people were calmly talking about it. So Noble felt comfortable releasing her consciousness to the embrace of sleep. The future looked bright. Noble only hoped that the calm would last. As usual, it wouldn't. The spring turned to summer, and the city of Ravenheart was unrecognizable from its previous state. While the area on the bridge where most awakened lived looked like it had for years, the mundane extension of the citadel underwent a vast transformation. From her porch, Noble sipped her tea and took in the landscape with a satisfied sigh. Her husband and his team had been hard at work. It looks better every day. After harvesting materials from swamps further down the mountains and importing supplies from the waking world, homes were going up at a rapid pace. Once the mundane workers were taught carpentry, they joined the workforce to construct orderly neighborhoods. While none of the homes were as grand as the government housing, they were sturdy and, thanks to an awakened with a special aspect ability, they were also very resistant to the elements. A market was also blossoming on the rim of the volcano. I need to pick up more vegetables before dinner. The volcanic ash had been used to turn one of the small patches of farmland into a vast hillside of crops. While not everything could thrive in the altitude and cold, some roots and other produce thrived under the harsh conditions. That was thanks to the valiant efforts of government engineers. Noble could hear water draining out of the cistern. By how much was being used, someone was using the bath. I will refill it when I get home this evening. The plumbers had promised to eventually get water running directly to the homes, but for now, they were more focused on draining the dirty water away than they were delivering clean water to citizens. The results spoke for themselves. Yesterday when Noble had gone down to the Dreamer Academy, she hadn't even gotten a whiff of bad air. That was good since the school was still being held largely outside. The funding to construct a facility was gathered, but finding the right location with enough space was proving challenging. At least Noble had narrowed down the possibilities to what she believed was the best possible location. She would run her findings by her assistant later and make sure that her reasoning was sound. There was a lot to do, but it would get done. As the morning sun cast light on the wafting smoke above the mountain, Noble sighed. I have enjoyed this strange moment of quiet for too long. I need to get going. Cradling her cup, she went inside and checked on the progress of her family. Everyone was awake and moving, so she heated some breakfast on their new wood-burning stove. Blaze, Brock, and Rain, come eat. You are going to be late. At this rate, so am I, Noble lamented silently. The twins came barreling down the stairs, brought their plates to the table, and dug into their meal. The boys were technically on break from formal schooling, but today they had a field trip with their teacher to study the igneous rock and how it was formed. It's going to be amazing. Blaze couldn't wait to get going. I can't wait to explore. Brock agreed with a mischievous grin. Don't get too close to the edge, and whatever you do, don't go in the volcano, Noble warned her boys sternly. Why are you looking at me? Brock scrunched his face. Because you were the one who fell in the hot spring 2 weeks ago, Blaze earned a withering glare from his twin. You are the one who wants to do all your special calculations. Who's to say you won't be the one to fall in this time? Brock stuck out his tongue. No one is falling in, and that's final. Listen to your sister if she tells you to do something. Otherwise, I will come on the next excursion as your exclusive chaperone. Noble stepped between the boys and kissed each of their foreheads. The boys nodded. Yes, Mom. I'm just glad Rain will be there to keep you safe. At that moment, the teen in question came down the stairs wearing a sensible pair of trousers, and a gray linen shirt with a vest over the top. Rain was full of excitement. She was even whistling a happy tune. Since when do you whistle? Brock tilted his head in confusion. Hello to you too. Rain patted her brother on the head. Grabbing a piece of fruit from a bowl, Rain headed for the door. I'll see you all later. Have a good day at work, Mom. In a raised voice, she added. Bye, Dad. Aren't you forgetting something? Adjusting his tie, Fort hurried down the stairs. Rain stopped mid-step. She turned and looked at her father, confused. I love you. Noble frowned. Are you not going on the trip with your brothers? Rain's chipper mood plummeted. That is today. Yes, Noble realized she hadn't confirmed with the girl since last week. If you have other plans that can't be changed, I can rearrange. I have plans. Rain glanced toward the kitchen's window. Noble noted a shift in the shadows out of the corner of her eye, but by the time she turned her head the movement had passed. But I can move them to this afternoon. Rain was clearly disappointed, but she nodded. You have work. Don't worry about us. Rain received a kiss on her head like her brothers. Thanks for going. I hope it won't mess up your other plans too much. No, my plans are usually flexible. It's fine. Rain assured her. Noble could easily guess what these mysterious plans were. Rain went out multiple days every week to train. The pale young woman had confirmed that she wanted to try her hand at awakening without the spell not long after her strange encounter at the cafe. The first few times Rain had gone out with plans, Noble had tracked her daughter to see exactly what Sunny had in store for Rain. He was a stringent but fair teacher, and a little eccentric. Overall, Noble found no fault with what he was doing to make Rain stronger. And nowadays the professor didn't have hours to observe the siblings or their interactions. Already today, she was running increasingly late. Love you all. I will be back for dinner. Noble waved. Don't forget these. Fort handed her a stack of reports in an envelope. Summoning a memory, Noble held out her hand. A wooden box appeared that would just fit the synthetic pages that her husband had provided. The government saw fit to use Noble as a courier between her ambassador husband and government headquarters, so they had commissioned a memory for papers to store pages and deliver them between worlds. Noble stuffed the pages into the box and dismissed it before giving her final kiss of the morning to her handsome husband. Have a great day. Flying down the street, Noble did not even bother to make her steps fully match her speed. She needed to make up some time. Already the Dream Gate was open for new arrivals when she passed. Both refugees and people from the outskirts still poured in daily after being vetted both to make sure they were healthy enough to enter the Dream Realm and not a skinwalker. The latter was arguably more important. Noble didn't have time to check the people herself as she sometimes did. All she could do was sweep as she flew by. Those people are clear, at least. The awakened who she passed on the bridge were uninfected as well. Other than Ginner and Lindy, no skinwalkers had been found inside Ravenheart, so Noble had never needed to call out the terrifying saint's name for help. Rushing through the outer courts of the Jade Palace, Noble found the gateway and touched it without hesitation. A moment later she found herself in front of her desk with hundreds of eyes fixed on her sudden appearance. Noble winced. Class was already in session. For more thrilling fanfiction stories like this, check out my channel Fanfic Audiobook. Dive into epic adventures, mysterious realms, and legendary journeys brought to life through immersive storytelling. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more amazing audiobooks.